Good morning, everybody. I do believe we are live. Welcome to House Church. Give me a minute. Let me send out the links to everybody. I hope everybody's having a great morning. And I hope you are too. And let's see. Hopefully we get some people joining us. Mark is always so fluent at this. Not so much. Definitely not my calling to be a YouTube broadcaster. Not like Mark. Okay. And all right. I hope everybody's having a good day. What you gonna smoke this morning? I'm gonna smoke some Kush during our morning conversation. See if they're seeing it. I'm gonna smoke some Kush during our
What's going on, brother?
Conversation. I'm echoing. See if they're seeing it. I'm not good at this. I'm so not good at this.
What's going on, Todd? You can't hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Blue, Snowball Mike, everything's all set. Let me see.
What's going on, Todd? You can't hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me? Hey, are you kidding a little bit? Let me see here. Are you hearing me okay? Are you hearing me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me talking? No?
I hear you perfect, but there's a reverberation coming. Yes, I hear you perfect. I hear you perfect. Can you not see me?
Yeah, I see you now. Yeah. I can see you and hear you. You need to turn the video. I don't have that on, actually. Let me see here. Put my headphones back in. I'm not getting my headphones to work. Oh, I love it. Good morning, everybody. I cannot believe how hard it is to do this sometimes, let me tell you. Oh, there's Mark's back. That's great.
7.
Oh, okay. Good morning again, sir.
Hello. Sorry about that. I didn't bring my earphones, so hopefully it works today. Thank you so much for opening up Hash Church, Todd. Always a pleasure to have you help me out like this.
It's my pleasure, Mark. I think what you do is great. I'm just not anywhere near as good at it as you.
No, you know what? It's super stressful because it's hard to get it flowy, and I feel the same way. Even though you think I'm better at it than you, I still feel like So hopefully we got the link sent out to the group. I see Etienne is going to probably say it doesn't work if I was a betting man. If I had $100,000 to put down, I would, oh, what? Look at that. Etienne says the link's not working. I'll get it to you, buddy. Let's see what we can do here. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to do this. We're going to go back. We're going to go boom. We're going to go bang. All right, let's see if I can get Monsieur Etienne and perhaps the rest of the group into the room. We'll hope for the best. I speak in not too long from I am in the big city of Toronto. So yeah, lots of big buildings outside the window. Can't really see very clearly because, oh, there we go. Because it's so dark, but that's, there it is. And of course, Colin's working it.
Nice. What's the name of the event you're there for? Right?
Yeah. Lift.
The Lift event. Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's called Lift. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good event. There's a lot of people, good amount of action going on, and yeah, they put it together well. It's activism, it's licensed producers, it's kind of the whole group in Canada that are all just trying to make this move forward. Welcome, Etienne.
Good
Monsieur
morning.
Etienne, welcome to the 350 people that are actually in the room watching right now. Thank you guys for tuning in today. Probably open up the YouTube chat room real quick so I can read what everyone's saying. And yeah, Tony's speaking. Johnny B is here at the event. We have a few less panelists today, but that's okay. You're going to go shoot Tony?
Yeah,
Colin's going to go shoot Tony. It's very American of you.
Jeez.
He's a videographer. He's shooting with a camera.
We're shooting some cameras.
Which is also very American of you. Who are the greatest storytellers on the planet?
Well, there's a lot of them.
Well, let's just say
Herzog's one of
let's
my
just
favorite.
say currently Hollywood seems to be the
Number one.
Yeah, like who else tells stories like that? Like movies and shit, like next level. Bollywood, I guess. Are you not having? Etienne seems to be having a problem. Welcome, Skunk Man Sam.
I had to just to restart because I put my camera on, so I should be okay now.
You look as friendly as always. Haze. Oh, nice shirt, Etienne.
You look nice and pale there, Sam.
Well, that's because it's Christmas time.
Ho, ho, ho.
That's why I have a Christmas wreath around my neck.
I thought you were just necking.
That's killing me. Really. Time to roll
Dude,
up.
how many hash churches has Sam been a doll for? All of them?
Sam, the doll is very inspiring, my friend. I think it's amazing.
Since I've been on, he's pretty much been the doll. I came in at what?
He's pretty.
40, 42 or something like that. I don't know.
That's funny.
Can we just do an edit of all the dolls?
Right? One day we were all going to come in as dolls.
I think everyone that's ever met Sam has
We're just,
thought of him
looking
as
for
a big, cushy doll.
Well, we got 12:04 here in Toronto, which I guess is 9:04 on the East Coast, and we already got 400 people in the room, so that's pretty good. Oh, sorry, Timothy James. Poor Timothy James. His torch just died. If we could all take a moment of silence for Timothy James and his torch, we are going to wish upon him that the gas refuels his torch and that the melt bubbles away in his quartz or his titanium or whatever it is that he chooses to smoke. Can Sam show what he's smoking on? No, Sam can't show what he's smoking on. I don't let him. It would make us all look bad, so we got to keep Sam in line here on Hash Church. We can't just.
And how he does it is also patented, and his steps that he takes are patented. So we can't fuck with the patentable reality.
Let's go shoot.
Not only is it patented, but I've copyrighted talking about it too, so you can't do that either.
Oh, yeah, I guess we have to send you some money for just that discussion, huh? Or is that complimentary? Is the first discussion free, but the rest will cost us?
Yep, you've been warned.
Did anyone hear about the cops busting the hemp expo in Sydney?
No.
Rob is talking there.
Yeah, well, someone just said, did you hear about the cops raiding the hemp expo in Sydney?
I take it it's Sydney, Australia.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I have some friends that are down there as well from Theracan. My friend Steve went down there and was checking it out. But
it is a hemp expo, but maybe now because medical marijuana was legalized a couple of months ago, maybe people were breaking out reefers and the cops freaked out.
I think that's probably a pretty accurate description of what potentially went down.
Australians have always been weird with cannabis. I was surprised to even see them go that direction, but a friend of mine has been working over there for the past year plus on their whole medical situation. He's an expert here in the United States and was contracted to go there, and he's really changed things, but it sounds like it hasn't really made its way down the to the lower levels of enforcement yet, which is unfortunate.
There are 3 companies which are licensed to either cultivate, to grow, to process. So there are 3 companies, but only one of them has all of the necessary licenses.
I'll tell you, they're just really going to have a hard time with this licensing in regards to the black hole that is the black market. How the hell do you get rid of the black market?
You never do.
One
It's
way. There's
You do,
one
well,
way
you do if you
really
legalize
good.
everywhere. You know,
What you
I
do
mean,
is you make the prices so cheap that there is no black market.
that's really the reality of it all.
Right. So that's like you kill the market with integrity.
well, you
Quality.
got to take away the profit motivation, right? If there's no profit, there's no
Absolutely,
market.
that's it.
Well, that's led to all the problems of
That's
prohibition
exactly it.
and the murders and the mayhem and all these things that are taking place because a value has been put on this flower that is really is no base in reality. It's literally been fictitiously plucked out of the air, but it's been, you know, perpetuated through the THCMQ and all these other things through the years that we have this false relevancy to a price structure for cannabis that has become inherent to where, I mean, back in the 90s, I mean, prices from an eighth were, you know, $50 an eighth back then, you know, and that still hasn't really changed.
Well,
I mean, you
I
can
think what
thank
has to
Prohibition
change.
also for giving us, you know, things like Al Capone. And Americans should have learned from alcohol prohibition and cannabis prohibition, which is basically similar, that it doesn't work.
I don't
Well,
know. Though.
they
I
did.
see two sides with the problem, though, Etienne. I see there's a lot of people that don't practice what BPG practices. They buy something at $10. You know, they buy a pound at 900. They're still selling it at 64. They don't give a shit that the producer's getting a lower profit. They're just getting more headroom in their profit margin because we're not seeing the prices go down at any of the retail stores. It's still prohibition era prices. Eighths are still $50 up, so that's $400 an ounce, $400 an ounce.
And that's going to become more. Sorry, I was going to say it's just going to become more challenging as with the problem with the states of California and these other states are using these taxational thoughts based on this false prohibitional high, which will, you know, they're trying to now figure out how to ways where those margins are and eat all those margins up completely. And they are to the point where, I mean, these new laws in California are going to directly affect craft cannabis and small scale providers. I mean, that's very unfortunate, but it very much looks like
it's not
reality.
Unfortunate. It's fortunate because it's been very unfortunate for society to have to pay high prices for something that shouldn't cost more than tomatoes.
Well, it's more like wheat and corn. America feeds the world with its extra wheat and corn. And if farmers really had their hands untied, cannabis, even if it was organic corn, organic wheat, organic cannabis, farmers can mass produce it and it will cost very little.
And that's what Todd's been talking about for months, as he's been stating, I can't wait till the prices of cannabis are that way so that everybody in America can have access to it. And I agree with it. I mean, the principle is sound in that everybody has an endocannabinoid system, which means everybody who does not have cannabis currently has a deficiency, which means we as a world and a society running deficient, which means we're not even pushing the boundaries of what is possible for our own humans, which means we can't even take care of ourselves, much as the rest of the human race at this particular point. However, with cannabis, it gives us an aspect and an open eye, as well as people can self-heal, as we've seen. You know, the giving tree that this is, it's nonstop, but for some reason, through its own need to perpetuate, has, you know, enlisted us humans along the way, and now we've really changed the tide, but the tide hasn't changed completely. We still have a lot of work to do, as we can see by the laws across the United States. It'll spread outward, but we still got to work on the Midwest and Central United States hardcore.
I'm not really a medical user, but that said, I've been heavily medicating myself for 51 years.
You're not addicted either.
I don't know. I never stop.
You know, though, I think a lot of us that are dabbing so much and smoking so much, and now that we're learning so much more about our endocannabinoid system, I think people are benefiting themselves by flooding their body with cannabinoids. I mean, we used to be told that this was something that was bad for us and stupid, and science has turned that on its ear. Now we know it's good for us, and it might be really important for our body's development. And if we have a deficiency or an inability to create these natural chemicals ourselves, these natural endocannabinoids, then cannabis is our only path of actually feeding our endocannabinoid system.
And that's something that we've known anecdotally, and for some reason we've known and felt good, and it's made us feel good to the point where science is now actually backs us up for why we feel the way that we do, and have now gone to the point where we now have, you know, CB1 antagonists, CB2 antagonists, and we have a different understanding of not only that, you know, there's, for some reason, CBD and THC both have keys to unlock and get into cancerous cells, which is still mind-boggling to, you know, researchers, how they can actually hold them down. You know, one cell holds it down while the other end continues to turn on the death inside the cell so that cancer doesn't perpetuate, which doesn't work for every cancer, unfortunately, but hopefully with more knowledge and research, we can create medicines that will make it possible for all through cannabis.
Right. Dr. Lester Grinspoon feels that caniopathic medicine is going to be actually a huge source of help for humans in the future, because we're only beginning to learn now how important the endocannabinoid system is and how intricate it is, and, you know, how CB1 and CB2 affects so many different elements of our body. So we're only learning now. I mean, we're only at the beginning. We really are.
And that's the excitement about all these people who are watching us and are researchers and are looking for, you know, abilities of where they can be if they're in school, looking to, you know, take that next step forward, that they can actually become researchers and doctors, and tests that can be done and actually move this entire thing forward. You know, that's all we're here to do, is to help educate so that you, the viewers, can actually take up that torch yourself along the way, because we've all been carrying this torch, and we're carrying this torch until we're as tired as we can be. But as we said, there's still so much more work to be done. You know, there needs to be a panel of thousands of us talking all the time, and, you know, having these discussions on our local levels, on the national level, so that we can actually change these laws, because as we know, we're outnumbered, outgunned, and definitely outfinanced gratefully.
It's the Cannabis Marijuana Olympics, and this is the marathon, and you have to pass that torch to the next guy, because it'll still be needed when we're all old and dead. Cannabis education never ends.
And you've proven that firsthand.
Absolutely.
And you've taught us firsthand, you and Rob both, and Todd and others that have taken it, and Bubbleman, that have taken it upon not just to just talk about it, but to actually educate and push things at a level that, you know, we wouldn't know what we know now if it hadn't been for you. We wouldn't smoke now and be able to smoke the varieties we have if it wasn't for you. So what will this next generation actually take up and, you know, run with? That's what excites me. When we get to that next edge of that precipice, what are those next questions that we will ask when we're at that new horizon? That's what excites me.
We all stand on the shoulders of giants, and I certainly did. And I hope the generation after us jumps up on our shoulders and does the same.
You gotta hope. You gotta hope. I want to give a few shout outs if I could. Am I coming through okay?
Yes.
We hear you.
Excellent.
Lima Charlie.
All I need. I wanted to thank Mick from Dark Crystal Glass Company, the glass cleaner. He does the quartz. He gave me this beautiful 35 mil banger yesterday. And then Nish, the glass blower, I want to shout him out for dropping me off this really nice little directional carb cap that actually fits this 35 millimeter bowl. And then, of course, all the gifts that Mick gave that I'm going to be giving away on my Wake and Bake show on this channel. So bottles of the DC glass cleaner, which is unbelievable. For those of you that have been using it, a quick little tip. Say you chaz your bowl up a little bit on a rip, dipping the Q-tips in and going to work, but actually pour a little shot of it in, and it's amazing, actually. Even with the force of the Q-tip and trying to scrape, you cannot be as efficient as just pouring a tiny bit in, and it basically boils. It grabs all the resin carries it up to the top, and that's when I usually just have a Q-tip and I'll absorb it like that. But kind of can't say enough about it, dude. It works really well.
What is the cleaner again?
Oh, the cleaner is called DC Glass Cleaner, and it's basically like, you know, one of these natural cleaners. It doesn't have any alcohols. It's mostly non-chlorinated water is probably 95% of it. It's got a little karanja oil, and then it's got 3 different types of extracts, which is like kale and sugar cane and one other that's also strange. But that's what the material is. It comes across just like water. It's kind of got a mildly soapy texture, but not really. I've never had it leave a taste in my banger. So it or even ash or anything. It just dissipates to nothing. So
is that available?
Yeah, and then I had one other shout out I had to get.
Is that available stateside or is that
everywhere,
only Canadian?
dude? Amazon. Yeah, go to Amazon and punch in DC Glass Cleaner, dark crystal glass cleaner, and it's I think it's like $15 a bottle or something, or $13 a bottle. Wholesale maybe $8 if you buy a case.
And Marcus, who made the Swiss perk that I have?
Yeah.
Who made that?
Nate Dizzle.
That's right, Dizzle. Yes, I heard he had some sort of a glass accident and put glass through his hand or something.
Was that recently?
I thought so.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Well, we'll confirm it. But yeah, he also recently had, I believe, maybe his first child. So he must be pretty excited about that. Shout out to Nate Dizzle for kicking down the Swiss perks, for really being an all-around awesome, pretty cool guy. You know, I met Nate as well as Steve Hops by flying into Amsterdam and meeting them at the airport. I had never met them, and I don't even think I'd seen a picture of them. And the plan was that I had known Martin from Ruhr, as you know, all of you guys do as well. Martin and I have been friends for some time, and I always thought, I've always supported glassblowers, you know, even when I had my gallery, it was not really to be a business, but it was to support glassblowers. And I've always loved glassblowers and everything that they do. And I thought back then it would be cool if I could bring some American glassblowers to Germany and maybe they could do some collaborations. So I met those guys at the airport. My manufacturer, Mark Rose, for bubble bags, he's got a son named Mark who's German and lives in Germany. And he said, hey, listen, I'll come to Amsterdam and pick you up in the van and drive you back to Germany. I was like, great. So I land at the airport. I look around for these guys. I eventually find them, Nate Dizzle, Steve Hops, and then another friend of ours, GZ1. He's a pretty well-known Instagram character that hangs out with the Philly glassblowing scene. Also a wicked guy. I had never met any of them. And if you ever just gone into a road trip with people you've never met, like all of a sudden, because this is what I decided, and Mark Christopher says to me, I can't go, but you can take my van. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? Like, it's like late at night. I've just flown 10 hours. I don't want to drive to Frankenthal, Germany. It's not as easy as it sounds, unless you had a GPS, which we did. But someone pushed a button at one point in time while we were having a nice little session, and he turned the GPS to German. And we couldn't turn it back. So it was quite an adventure, quite hilarious. I started telling that story. But shout out to Dizzle, shout out to Steve Hops and all the awesome glassblowers out there doing their thing.
A German GPS would be a bit of a challenge, for sure.
Oh, just listening to it would be fun. If it could actually pronounce the streets and the towns properly, you could actually learn it.
I like German.
Dude, it was hilarious.
Yes, it has much more discipline.
Auschwitz.
Yahoo?
Yeah, it was funny. We were laughing. She was saying all sorts of shit.
You guys, either I'm
I
stoned or
muted
you're
myself.
actually funny. I'm not sure. I might just be stoned.
You are stoned. And he
I'm
was
gonna
on
have to
mute.
stay stoned.
Go with stoned. Go with stoned.
Absolutely.
Fresh flowers would do that.
550 people in the room. We got pharmacy, bro. Oh, I saw some really nice flyers. Let's see. Yo, Mark, Steve Hops invented the inline perk. Yes, absolutely. Steve Hops invented the inline perk and invented the Swiss perk. And so I thought it would be that what a cool thing to go and put on Ruhrs, which were very much a straight, you know, down stem. to put Swiss Perks and inlines into Roers. So of course Flav bought them all. So I get to puff them every once in a while. It's pretty amazing actually. Welcome Sylvain Saint Germain and Ty Palmer. Ty Palmer's doing a cool project. I should talk a little bit about that. You know, when he first told me about it, I wasn't really fully understanding exactly what it was about. Okay, so it's called Legalized Trees. And is it Ty? Yeah, okay, good. I'm glad I got that right, Ty. I didn't want to muck that up. So they're doing a soft launch tomorrow, and I'm going to share this. It's an animator of the Project of Sufferings. Okay, so he had some problems, so the animation didn't get done. But basically what they're doing is, and Todd, you would be quite, well, you know what? All of you guys, in fact, would be incredible for this. I get asked to do all sorts of this stuff. I never know if it's going to be cool or if it's not going to be cool. But this one was kind of cool. It's, you know, it's a little podcast. Right now they've got a graphic of me kind of psychedelically done, and it's basically me just telling my story of how I got inspired to do bubble bags. And I think it's just like 3 or 4 minutes long, or 2 minutes. I can't even remember. Maybe it's 5 minutes. But it's a cool thing. You guys can check it out at legalizedtrees.com eventually when it goes live. And I will share mine here soon. I'm not sure how I could really share it. Not that you'd want to watch it right now or listen to it right now anyway, but I'll figure it on the Facebook page. So, and I'm sure Ty will want to get in touch with you guys, because I think that his whole purpose is to kind of, you know, like what you've mentioned in the past, Todd, about the importance and the value of this culture. Certain people are seeing that and they want to push it to the front. And it's so, you know, these are unique activism like type stories that are like, you know, that at one point in time, I mean, I know lots of people would love to hear each and every one of your guys' stories and how you got into cannabis. Now, we've talked about it a lot on Hash Church, but this is a unique little platform, and I think he's going to do good with it. So
that is
go
cool.
check that out.
I just did a voiceover for The Secret Cup. They are making a documentary about the event that's been going on for the last 5 years, and they did a cool animation. Jeremy asked me if I'd do the voiceover, so he was up here the other night, and it was really cool. I can't wait to see it come out. I think events like The Secret Cup, you know, have created not just awesome like opportunities for the community to come together, but they have propelled the community, because people who are making the stuff are able to see each other and what they're doing and how they're doing it, and it really ups their game considerably when they're competing against, you know, kind of the best of their field.
Well, it's also not only has it up the community, it's up the access to the community, because now people in the absence of that are creating their own cups and their own award ceremonies, or, you know, as we saw in the Bay Area, they started creating their own little gatherings where, you know, people can actually perpetuate and buy and learn and dab and, you know, quietly meet. I mean, they're all over the United States now. It was started in LA and then up here, and now Colorado. Okay, so secret sessions are now all over the place, you know, and our
no, secret sesh. No, Secret Cup. The secret sesh people stole the name from Secret Cup. It's cool. It's cool if we're gonna be like that. The Secret Cup started back in I want to say 12 with Big D doing wanted to do a competition, because you know, extraction is legal in Colorado, and he ran an extraction facility called Top Shelf Extracts, and Jeremy got involved and helped them put it together. And the Secret Cup became legendary, in my opinion, because it really did a good job of pulling together really cool hash makers. You know, it's the next level on all. You've had the kits; they're just incredible.
Yeah, it raised my level of expectation as well after viewing how many of those kits we've actually either handled or we actually you photographed them, but then I got to actually write, where I actually did sample testing of each individual and actually did full write-ups of each one, because it's a whole new level of understanding at that level of what the clarity, what you were getting compared to what I was used to seeing, the consistency of the hash compared to what I was used to seeing. and seeing what it should be across the board, which made me aware so I could tell others, as well as when they tasted and saw it, they were like, oh shit, I got to raise my game. So they started to look at, you know, technology and improving their processes through technology, to where now across the board, the hash that I'm getting is on the quality and on par of what I was actually seeing in competition. So it's raised across the board. The entire conversation, which has helped everybody, because some of that stuff earlier on was, you know, pretty dark and muddy and inconsistent. Now to see how clear or buttered or all these different varieties, because not every, you know, bud will shatter, not every bud will actually, you know, go clear. So it's interesting to now see the next advancements in technology, because now you've got these specific vacuum pumps, you've got, you know, Indra from his creation to propel it now to where the people have taken it to a whole other level. And now with these legal medical, you know, states that actually are putting standards, actual production standards, where you've now got companies manufacturing equipment, whereas, you know, 5-7 years ago the only way to do that was in a pan, you know. So now it's pushing things at a whole other level of what is even possible. So again, excited to see where things go, because these technology and these companies that have just side companies that are just toying with it, now more larger manufacturers have see the benefits and are starting to put their expertise in. So it'll only make it better and cheaper to produce in the end.
Right. Well, I think that's the point, is this, that you're seeing on the market now the stuff that we only saw in the kits 3-4 years ago.
Correct. And yeah, because and you know, it's a shame that the cup isn't continuing forward, because it'd be good to see what the, you know, because now everybody's at this standard. Now people are going to push that standard further, you know, and constantly push it. And that's what the great thing about the competition was. You really got to taste the terps. You really got to taste these things that made us realize that, oh, there's a difference in production out of the BHO as opposed to, you know, the CO2. There's definitely, you could taste the flavonoids, the high, everything having to do with it was, it seemed, it taught us that it seemed to be superior to absorption for these cannabinoids, or access to these.
What did?
The BHO, as opposed to, in comparison to the CO2 extraction. You know, it showed us.
I think cannabinoids.
How much?
Cannabinoids. CO2 is great for pulling cannabinoids, but it's shitty for pulling terpenes. Just like it.
Correct.
It's good for pulling caffeine, and it doesn't pull the flavonoids and wonderful sense of coffee, so they can go on to sell the coffee beans. You know, I think all of the extraction methods have like a place in a sense, because, you know, there's going to be traditional people that just like to, you know, sieve their buds and take that hash and make full melt. And then there's going to be people that like to actually turn it into little pens that they can give their grandfather when he's having a moment dealing with his chemotherapy session. So I think
also a point about flavonoids. If you eat it orally, flavonoids can be active. If you smoke it, it deactivates the flavonoids. You don't get any synergy from THC and flavonoids that are smoked.
That's why a lot of people are taking the CO2 distillate and are making edibles out of it.
Don't you think, Sam, that there's going to be a shift in the way people breed now? Because now that they're not breeding under the thumb of prohibition, don't you think that they're going to move away from having to breed, or look for, at least in their sex and selection, the heavy and fast flowering flowers, and now they're going to be able to look for the ones that smell good, or the ones
in theory, you could be correct. They could grow plants that only yield a half pound, and it's like stacked calyxes where there is no real buds, but it just has incredible resin on it. Yeah, absolutely, especially personal connoisseurs. For business, you know, it'll be harder to come, because they're looking at the dollars and cents. Well, and also, what's popular this week? What fad cannabis is there?
To a degree, but you know, it's almost like you can't see a pot documentary with some new wannabe cannabis entrepreneur standing in front of a warehouse grow talking shit about 3 pounds of light. And my thought is always 3 pounds of what I don't want to smoke per light.
Yeah, well, that's how I feel about these multi-poly hybrids. they're just so mixed up, they all start getting vaguely similar to each other.
Well, can we talk about that for a minute? Because what you're basically saying is people are buying their seeds of complex hybrids, they're mixing them together, and they're basically making what I think Rob called in marijuana botany a dog's breakfast.
Yes, it can be a great plant. You might be able to pick a great plant out of that, but it is not uniquely different from everything else out there because it's a multi-hybrid that probably has a little bit of everything else in it.
Right. You know, and somebody was just mentioning about 3 pounds of light, and I'd like to point out that there's been varieties like Big Bud in the 90s. Serious Seed sold a variety called Chronic, and while it was its heaviest yielder, it wasn't what I went to smoke it first out of the catalog. It was always the Cali Mist, and then the AK at night. You know, but
yeah,
if you want a yielder, they've been there, but a lot of times the yielders are not what you want.
I've seen narrow leaf drug varieties, what people call sativas, equatorial tropical varieties, that can yield 3 to 5 kilos per plant if it's grown big enough. But I'm not going to say that indica hybrids don't out yield them, because they're faster, and they do give you more product.
You know, though, I want to point something out about that, because the northern varieties, what we're calling indica, always need more time vegging than the equatorial varieties that we're calling sativa. And I've seen people put long flowering varieties in the ground without any pre-grow and finish faster or sooner. Like, let me take this for an example. A 10-week NL5 by Haze can come down quicker than, let's say, a Skunk 1. Because if you give that Skunk 1 3 or 4 weeks of pre-grow time and 8 weeks of growing, you're at 12 weeks. And you could have put the NL5 right in the little pot, popped it, had a 30-inch plant that yielded you a ½ ounce in 2 weeks less. So I think that if people learn how to use the plants and what the plants will do, we're going to see huge advancements in the way people grow cannabis. But could you talk a little bit about this, Sam, about sativa indica? Because I saw an article on Facebook the other day talking about the effects of sativa, the effects of indica. And, you know, the word sativa and indica were never, ever meant to describe an effect. There's a lettuce sativa.
Well, maybe to some limited degree it did. But in general, wide leaf drug varieties, as a population, have considerable CBD in them. Whereas as individual plants, people, at least previously, had selected only the ones that were high in THC only. So that is what hit the population in the mid-70s, 80s, 90s, on up until the last 10 years, when people started focusing on CBD. Now they'd be happy to find some. Because if you grow seeds from Afghanistan, the farmers there are selecting for resin. They're not selecting for THC or CBD because they don't smoke individual plants. What they do is they dry sift it, they get all this resin, and they smoke it. So if the plant has lots of resin, they keep the seeds from it.
Right. Well, can we talk about these two words then? Sativa, when Carl Linnaeus was tagging plants like lettuce, like cannabis, with the name sativa, he was literally meaning just to cultivate. All sativa meant was to grow.
And in Europe at that time, that is all there was.
Okay, so he was basically tagging good plants as like a, hey, put this in your garden kind of thing. That's what it would mean. If a plant
they were growing it either for the seed, probably for the fiber.
Okay, so all these different plants are called the same thing, sativa. When he was doing this selection of cannabis back in the what would have been the 18th century, was he not looking for environmental varieties? Wasn't rope, cloth, paints, varnishes, canvas what was important to them?
Absolutely, that is what was important to them.
So all sativa, so realistically, sativa was industrial cannabis. It's because they were not selecting for the resin.
The drug varieties, wide leaf and narrow leaf, came from the Far East, either India or the areas north and west of India, like Afghanistan, Pakistan.
So literally,
Yarkand.
right, because the word indica literally means of or like India. Is that correct?
Yes, but the wide leaf varieties that everybody called indica were not really mostly from India. A little bit in Kashmir, but really they're more from northern Pakistan, northern Afghanistan, and the countries north of that area. The
But
best
can I point
hashish
something out?
used to come from Yarkand.
But can I point something out? You go back a few hundred years, and Pakistan and Afghanistan were part of India.
I'm not sure Afghanistan was ever part of India. The Afghans would have disagreed on that. Remember what they did to the Brits?
But remember, I love you. Remember the map though that I saw of your razor going back. I mean, in time.
Pakistan was absolutely for sure, and parts of Afghanistan the Brits said they controlled, but I don't think they really did any more than the present government of Afghanistan controls Afghanistan.
Right. You know what? Can I be a real weirdo though and bring you back to the Silk Road when Columbus was obviously looking for a path to India? What don't you think they were bringing back what we call drug varieties now?
From where to where?
Well, it wasn't. He was going from Spain to India. The whole thing I was taught was Columbus was trying to find a shorter route to go to India. I assume to buy shit.
Right.
Why else do you go to the mall?
A water route, because as opposed to the land route, which was the silk trail or the hash trail, as Rob said, because the silk made it the hash.
Even if all he was doing was moving hashish, or the traders after him, if you open up enough finger hash from Kashmir, you find a seed or two. I guarantee it.
So now going to India with this. So when you get into the reality that from Pakistan over the Hindu Kush Mountains and all the way south to the peninsula was India, and India has what is called indica products. So that means everything we smoke, everything we use as a drug is indica. It's just that in India, it ranges from wide leaflet plants to narrow leaflet plants.
Really not very
really high.
There's really not very many wide leaf varieties, only in the very far north. And I wouldn't be surprised if they were brought from Afghanistan and Pakistan. I think India basically is a narrow leaf drug country. Even Nepal, when you go up into Nepal, I mean, they're a bit wider. They look more like Thai, which there can be skinny ties, but most ties are actually fairly large, wide leaves. I mean, not wide like Afghanistan where they overlap each other. But you understand.
Yeah, I do. I've always felt that what we were really trying to describe when we were growers talking about it was a northern plant and an equatorial plant. A northern plant that grows fast and makes dense buds so that it can protect seeds from cold nights. And then equatorial plants, which are loose and spindly and can dissipate high moisture areas really well. So I felt like what we were trying to describe was the way it was growing. And for the people who were not growing, they were trying to describe it as the way it made them feel.
Well, in general, I'd say tropical ones have the potential to have much better flavors and taste to me than the wide leaf drug varieties. A lot of those are almost like medicinal, narcotic. I don't know. It's just, but maybe it's my cup of tea also.
Could you, Jeff just brought up in the chat Ruderalis. Can you tell us the history of this plant?
I don't know if Ruderalis is a true variety or just escaped hemp. Hopefully, DNA analysis would show that. If people have DNA of a Ruderalis that they collected themselves so they know where it's from, then people like Rob and I could maybe try to find out, was industrial hemp grown in that area, and try to compare the industrial hemp variety with the Ruderalis. Because also too, I know it may also be wild in some places and not introduced by man, but I doubt it, because for example, Finola had parents that were almost auto, and which implies it had Ruderalis type genes in it. But I don't think it was there 15,000 years ago when everything was all ice and everything. I think it was brought by man within the last 5,000 years, but I don't know, and I don't have proof. And I wish we could test every land race and every population in the world to try to start to answer these questions.
GW had come out, or there was discussion, or GW Pharmaceuticals was working on a classification of the combination of the two and calling it Rasta, cannabis Rasta, as opposed to cannabis indica. That never seemed to take hold, or I haven't heard much further.
The reason you never heard about it is because GW is a bald head, man.
So Jeff actually asked if indica could have been from Afghanistan varieties that were brought to Russia, and maybe when they went feral, they became weedy because they probably selected themselves through acclimatization to a short little plant that would survive rather than some big.
But plants do not become high in THC or high in particular cannabinoid without the hand of man.
Right,
hand of man is what makes high THC.
But Ruderalis isn't known to Ruderalis. I've obviously never seen Ruderalis in my life. And I don't know of anyone with a cutting or some seeds I can get them from. So I've always thought it was bullshit. But I always thought it was like a weedy variety that could have escaped. And it's
low THC, but the reason people were using it was because it had auto genes. Either auto, meaning when you plant the seeds, they will start growing after a set amount of time, and or auto, meaning that when they finish flowering, they don't finish. They just keep making flower biomass until the cold kills them. There's no way to stop them. They don't stop flowering. They never go into the final phase of cannabis, which is frost out. The last few weeks should be frosting out, but these don't do that.
It was my understanding that Ruderalis was originally found on the roadside in Russia. Is that correct or incorrect?
Well, no, it's been found all kinds of places, and some people say it's its own variety, and other people say that it's escaped from the hand of man, and it just hasn't been cultivated forever. And the further north you go, the more likely it will be auto, otherwise it wouldn't survive.
Correct. Because I know that, I mean, it grows throughout Russia. I mean, because when I was back 20 years ago dealing with hemp, we were offered all this cheap Ukrainian hemp, and it turned out it was all irradiated from Chernobyl. So very aware of cannabis that does grow in Russia. But
that Ukrainian hemp was really good to make glow-in-the-dark blankets.
Well, the problem is it's really good hemp, and that's the problem, is it was so cheap that we sent somebody with a rad meter and they hit it, and they were like, oh shit, it went off, and that's how we realized that we didn't want it. But that's, I always wondered about how far back, because I used to have the theory that it goes back to Gondwana land, but since it was never really found naturally in North America, that kind of has killed my idea. But if you look how India separated from Australia, and I wonder when Gondwana land, as it was a land mass, at what point did cannabis appear? We don't know. We have no.
No, but what we do have is certain records of either seeds, fibers, pollen. So if you look at Rob Clark's book, Cannabis Evolution and Ethnobotany, or maybe it's the other way around, Ethnobotany and Evolution, you can see he's got records of all the oldest cannabis finds, whether it be fiber or seeds or pollen, because one of the oldest surviving things they find are layers in mud in the bottoms of lakes or redding ponds that has pollen in it or seeds.
Yeah, I was actually looking for marijuana the first 12,000 years. When it was written, the oldest artifacts were 12,000 years old around cannabis.
Rob,
what are the oldest artifacts now, Sam?
I'm not sure, but I've heard, 20,000 almost years, but I haven't read the actual paper, and I don't know if some of the claims are true, but they don't find it outside of the old world. They didn't find any in North or South America or Central America that was pre-Columbus.
Right. There's no cannabis that's indigenous to the Americas. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, yeah.
Right.
And it's such an important plant that because you can use it for food, you can use it for medicine, you can use it for fibers, that it wouldn't have just gone by the wayside. I mean, those people tried everything in every way and saved the winners.
Right. Can I ask you about frosting up? When you're talking about that, like with Skunk 1, how much of the resin is put on in the final weeks of flowering?
Well, I wish I could prove it, but I can't, because if you what you really need to do is have two identical clones that grow exactly the same, so that you could harvest them at different times. But I would estimate maybe 25% of the total weight.
Of the total weight. So
yeah, when it's a dry, mature plant. In other words, if you harvest it a few weeks earlier, then or like 3-4 weeks earlier, then it'll be considerably less heavy.
Right, right. So how much further past the point of seeing the pistils turn red and wither?
It's all dependent on the variety. I mean,
okay.
Some you might want to pull before they've all turned red. Other ones are maybe better 2-3 weeks after. What you have to do is grow it enough times under slightly different conditions and pick them at different conditions. And then you say, wow, this is the way I like it.
Right. When I used to work for a friend of ours, he grew skunk number 1, and he picked it at 6.5 weeks because that's where he liked the effect. I didn't like that personally. I like it.
I'm a 10-weeker.
Yeah, I'm toward the 9 to 10 weeker, and I used to clown him all the time regarding his cannabis, but that's how he liked it, and that's how he did it. And
Rob liked it a week or two earlier too. He said it was sweeter and more up.
That's what he said. It was more of an up. It wasn't more for the flavor. It was more for the high.
Rob told me a long 20 million years ago, he told me that he liked varieties that flower quickly, harvested early, because it mimicked the effects of the varieties that flowered longer, and he liked them going later. And he said the effects were similar and psychedelic because he liked that kind of wow feeling instead of the sedative.
I think what he's trying to do is retain the majority of the monoterpenes, because the longer you let it go, you know, they're gone, but not gone, but I mean, they're slightly reduced.
Rob, we're talking about Rob Clark, author of Marijuana Botany, Hashish, and more recently Cannabis Evolution and Ethnobotany. And I'll be picking him up in the next couple of weeks. So we'll have him on Hash Church one of these Sundays coming up in June. I'm most positive.
That's if they let him out of jail in Australia.
If they let him out for, right, inciting people to grow cannabis, no less, right? That's hilarious. And we were not talking about auto flowerings. We were actually talking about skunk number 1, and it's a variety that Sam bred. When did you start breeding skunk 1?
When did I? In the early 70s.
Did it originally smell like a skunk?
Absolutely, it did.
Yeah,
all the plants smelled quite skunky.
Right. No, I think that's totally cool. And what was? Can
what,
I ask?
What I found out was,
how did it happen? What's this? What's
breeding?
Who are the parents?
That the sweeter ones were more up, and I like that better. I like the taste better. I like the effects better, and I like the more up better. So you know, after 10 years of using a population of several hundred plants a year, it was able to pretty easily shift it towards what I liked.
So why the number 1?
Because there was a bunch of skunks. There was, in other words, there were several other people who had pot they were calling skunk-like. So I called mine skunk number 1 so people could easily identify it. But that was herbal pot, not seeds.
Herbal pot, right.
Did you-
somebody, go ahead.
Did you have any art designs? Like back in the day, some people did put art in their herb. Did you put any art in your herb at all, or was it just herb?
No, because I never moved herb. I only sold seeds.
Oh, I love it. And he had the Sacred Seeds was his label, because that was the first seed company. What year did Sacred Seeds start?
1975.
I was all of 5. Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah,
Somebody
I
in the room
remember because when I dropped off a kilo of seeds at your house, you just threw them out in the backyard.
Well, I was 5. What did you expect of me? But I caught on later. Someone in the room asked, what are amber trichomes?
What about amber trichomes?
Well, when I'm growing and I start seeing amber trichomes, it's usually because of damage to the trichome heads. How far along, or would be a better question, do all varieties, after a while, is the life of a trichome that it grows, it produces the resinous head, and then at some point does that head pop? Because that is it's what we're seeing when we see amber is oxidization.
They split more than they pop. But that said, they all turn colors. Under artificial lights, they barely turn colors, or they turn more white or very light yellow. In a greenhouse, they will turn light tan to light reddish with enough time. Outdoors, they'll do it wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, reddish. But it also depends on the variety. Some are just much more susceptible to color change.
I didn't know wham, bam, thank you, ma'am was an actual color, but that's good to know.
No, that's an agricultural term.
It's definitely a scientific term. But I've had a lot of varieties that I've had gone late indoors that have not had amber resin glands. And I just assumed it was because it wasn't any environmental.
Because it's the artificial light. Get it under a UV source and bang.
And over a little bit of time, it'll oxidize. Because really what we're seeing is oxidization of the oils.
Yes, that's basically the honest truth.
And it's basically, it's growing from the inside and splitting it as it grows, correct?
You're talking about the contents of the resin head?
Correct.
Yeah, but they don't all break. They don't all split. They don't all rupture, because you can get them, and if you dry your herb for a couple of weeks and cure it for 3 months, but they're fairly impervious to being dry sifted. Whereas if you try certain other varieties, even after that long, they're greasy. I mean, they make dry sifting a bloody nightmare.
Right. So it's variety specific, to say the least.
Yeah, there's a lot of different kinds of resin heads. Absolutely true.
That's incredible when you start thinking about it along those lines. So now are all the terpenes or some of the terpenes all found inside of the trichome head?
As far as I know, yes. I've heard tiny bits of terpenes are produced in leaf or stem material, but I don't know that for a fact. I've just heard it. Whereas I know the vast majority are produced inside the resin head.
So I've photographed, and I'll do it's more the stems, and stems have very small resin heads on them that I'm sure are all bursting. I mean, I've done photos with heat of buds, and you can see where the heads have melted, and it looks like hair.
And I'm not disagreeing with you, Todd, because I had a variety that even after drying for 2 weeks, curing for 3 months, that all you had to do was drop the buds into a plastic Ziploc, and it just greased up the sides, because the stuff just, it didn't dry. It was just practically liquid.
No, it's funny. Jeff asked about Tangy and sour diesel, and Soma, specifically New York sour diesel, being bad hash makers. It's funny he says that, because Tangy is really a shitty producer, but it smells great, and it's fun to smoke. I like the flowers, but he's so right. And And then it also comes through dark. I mean, I think that is just, from what I was understanding on Shatter, the what do you call it? From what do you call it? Shatter is just myrcene. And isn't that right? The golden color we see in Shatter is the terpene myrcene. Sam?
What was that?
The color we see when we see Shatter, like that golden color of Shatter, is actually myrcene.
It's myrcene?
Yeah, that's what I was told. Yeah.
Yeah, but myrcene doesn't have any color.
Well, okay. If anyone can answer that, I'd love to know. Dark and low percentage, yeah. So some varieties just do, and some varieties obviously are really great. I mean, that's the weird of it. You really got to find the varieties that work for the situation you're using them for, because cannabis, whenever I see somebody trying to generalize what cannabis will do, I always think, wow, they have very little experience. Because in my experience, cannabis always surprises me. The varieties are as different as my friends.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, there's medical, there's recreational, there's spiritual cannabis use, and there's also industrial, which, I mean, there's 25,000 different industrial products that cannabis can be used for. So
50,000.
okay, well, I was cutting it in half because I had already mentioned recreational and medical.
Well,
Fair enough.
Whatever, you got the picture.
It's interesting right now because I was reading a great article about all the cases that were purged because of Prop 64 passing, and the article that went around the United States was about convictions go up in smoke in California. Hot convictions go up in smoke because now in California, it's a misdemeanor. If you're non-medical and you get caught growing, it can be 2 plants or 2,000 plants. You're only going to get charged with a misdemeanor.
But you can legally grow 6 plants as an adult here in California now.
You can legally grow 6, but if you grow 7 to 2,000, you can only be charged as a misdemeanor. And if you're medical, they don't even know what to say. Right now.
I saw in the news online that some farms it was either Sonoma or Mendocino got busted in the last few days because they had several thousand plants.
Yeah, I think you're still going to see enforcement, and the sheriff's department up in Mendocino and areas, Humboldt, basically we're stating that they're gonna enforce the new laws as vigorously as they enforced prohibition.
It was not a legal grow; they were just going for it.
Yeah, and look, right now it's hard. The state hasn't passed out one license to anybody under the new current system, so none of the localities have been able to. Because first you're going to have to get your state license, and you're going to have to get your local license. So people are trying to get in place right now, but nobody actually has a license yet. There are people like BPG, for instance, that are licensed on a local level, but that's always been in defiance of the state in a way.
Correct. And now we're waiting on, because now to have a state license, you have to be locally licensed and okayed. And those that were out by a certain amount of time will be the first ones to have permits. But it's definitely a step in the right direction. And look, I was glad to read that article and see more people, get their records expunged. And I saw people are doing classes now where they can teach people how to actually get your previous records expunged, because I think you still have to right to actually have them expunged here in California. But if you have a felony or smaller dealing with cannabis, you can have those wiped off your records.
Yes. Well, the best way is to be proactive and to get a lawyer, have them file a motion, and then they ask for a hearing date, and they'll go in, and then your lawyer will make an argument as to why your charges should be amended to reflect what is the current charges, which are very low or if nothing. So they'll move to dismiss.
I patented a new variety called expunged.
That would be a great one, but this is a step in the right direction because so many people have had their lives affected with felony convictions. There's a movement called Ban the Box. And what that's about is when you go to try to get a job, there's a little box that says, if you've been convicted of a felony. And, for a lot of people that aren't self-employed or growing their own herb or doing whatever they're doing, that destroys their life. It's a hurdle that many
used to, Todd. I think those days are over.
Well, I definitely, for people that involved in cannabis, I hope so. I mean, it breaks my heart to see how cannabis has had, cannabis families in the communities have had their worlds ripped apart because we were criminals when otherwise we were not.
Well,
We were
the
law-abiding
biggest way to
citizens.
judge it might be to look 10 years ago. How many public cannabis people were there? Now look today. There's a million.
It's
No,
great.
there's millions, but that's California. That's the West Coast. This isn't Oklahoma. This isn't Louisiana. This isn't
Well,
Tennessee.
let's get it legal there, then it will be.
Yeah, it's going to get legal there. I mean, I think that the people in office are well, yeah, Feinstein. What's up with that, Etienne? That would be something to bring up.
Holy
That was a completely 180. So Dianne Feinstein, for those of you watching, has been an absolute opponent of cannabis, medical cannabis, for years. And now she just took a complete turnaround, and they're putting out a completely different stance on the whole thing, looking for research onto the values of medical cannabis.
Yeah, Feinstein Grassley. That's what it's called.
It's only for CBD.
Yeah, but it's a start. You got to understand is that Feinstein has been the most staunch prohibitionist to cannabis and anything cannabis and everything cannabis.
I understand that crystal clear, but it's only CBD. So she's not letting the drug genie out of the bottle. She's only allowing CBD.
Correct,
Even though
but
for a lot of
still
medications, we know THC and CBD is more effective than CBD alone.
correct. But it's a huge crack in the prohibitionist ceiling that is Feinstein that she actually introduced that. So it's a shift. Remember, it's a foot in the door. Even though the CBD, it's a start. It's gonna spur further on. We've seen these states that just went with CBD only legislation of now going in and amending it and allowing in cannabis, or starting to. So I agree, it is only CBD, but it's the most staunchest prohibitionist we've had to deal with. That's a Democrat switching, and then secondly, it's more education out there that people realize that there are and is medical use of cannabis, even if it's different from how they were thought and told, and you're just doing it to get high kind of shit.
The other good thing about it is I assume the research will find out something positive.
Well, we're seeing that now with THC and CBD. It'd be interesting to see. I just got the IACM news, and the top thing is that Cannabidiol effective against epilepsy and Dravet syndrome. So we see, it does have medicinal use, but we need more studies.
Well, the studies should happen, but we have been, honestly using it ourselves and finding relief for decades, which is why this movement has grown so large. I mean, if it wasn't for cannabis actually really working, we wouldn't all be advocating for it.
Wow. And this is also from the New England Journal of Medicine, by the way.
They're all going to have to come around. When you look, I feel like the writing is on the polls, because when you see a conservative state like Florida, when it comes to voters, Florida has always been a conservative state. And when you see 71% of the voting pool voting for medical cannabis, even the most conservative politicians have to take note about that and realize that if they oppose this, they are opposing 71% of the opinion, the populace opinion in Florida. That's huge.
That just completely shifted the dynamics, because as we were talking the other day, it's a reason why people like Feinstein are changing their suits, is they realize that, I'm going against the electorate as well as against history. I need to change my position. Even though it's a soft pedal direction, it's still a significant change in direction. And somebody like that, again, she is a rock that causes ripples, because she's a senior.
Consider her an old white guy in a suit. And,
pretty much.
Yeah, and those people, I just don't know if they're going to change.
I think not. But I see it like this. It's just like, seeing a barometer shift. There's going to be a change in the weather, and that's really what I think it indicates. I am not a fan of a lot of the people in office. I've always felt like, you know, look, I've been battling this for a quarter century since I met Jack. This has been an uphill battle the whole way. And you've been even at it even longer, dealing with the hypocrisy and idiocracy of governments and even of professionals. People who consider themselves educated are ignorant about cannabis.
Willfully ignorant, even.
Willfully
Well,
ignorant.
they're
Indeed.
dogmatic is the problem. They don't want to change.
And now they're going to have to, because I think more and more people are actually sharing the information. Our smartphones are really playing a pivotal role in us educating one another.
You also saw Sanjay Gupta and others now change their also perspective, which also has quite an influence and has had a large ripple effect on doctors and professionals that before, you know, remember it was Dr. Todd McCormick and Frank Lucido had to actually sue the government back in the 96, 97, because just to have that doctor confidentiality to discuss medical cannabis, the government tried to take that away from them. So even doctors had to become activists professionally because their licenses were threatened and they were actually, you know, harassed by the, you know, the Office of, you know, Drug Control bullshit.
Look at the California Medical Association. It went after Dr. Todd McCormick. It went after
Correct.
Dr. Eidelman. It went after the guys that were initially pushing for legalization and medicalization of cannabis to be taken seriously. So they literally attacked their own. And you know, Dr. Todd McCormick always pointed out that he felt like he had taken an oath and to basically be truthful and do the right thing and heal people, and he had to follow that. And that their policy was destroying lives and destroying people. And once you realize that, you absolutely have to fight against it.
And that's what we saw. And that was a beautiful thing to actually witness and very empowering to us patients, because we were also afraid and wondering if now that this type of encroachment, is it now going to come into my doctor's visit? And it took the doctor's strength and resolve and their own money to actually stand up and fight so that the rest of America could realize that, oh, I can actually talk about this as a doctor with my patient and not have to actually be threatened. I mean, that was really a major stand up from the professionals and the doctors and the true empaths that really
to explain the problem. They basically threatened Dr. McCormick with taking away his doctor's license if he discussed or prescribed or recommended cannabis.
Correct. And he said, bullshit, fuck you. And he lawyered up, and you know, the awesomeness that is Dr. Todd McCormick, that all of us that were blessed to be touched and were ever around him. He was a kooky and nutty fellow, but he stood and knew his rights and knew where his constitution was and always had it on him and was easily able to stand up, and not only stand up, but to eloquently not only convey the message, but so beautifully insult them with wonderful words along the way that they would have no idea that they were being insulted.
You understand, he was the head of the first, I believe it was the NIDA cannabis research organization in the, I think, 67, 68.
And my first meeting in 93, when I went to the first CAN meeting, Dr. Todd McCormick was there, and he held up that book. And as a veteran who was hunting for information or research, this is again pre-internet, so there was no going to, you know, PubMed and looking something up. It was trying to find people in periodicals. And not only that, here was the periodical in his hand, and this is the guy who wrote it, because he was involved in gathering the research since before I was even born. And so for me, it was, you know, for me, there was my Jesus Christ. There was my Savior. There's the guy I was looking for, who had the information, who wasn't afraid to talk about it. 3 was so, I mean, there was no really better, well-versed individual at the time speaking medically, because he not only did he have the knowledge, but he also had the encyclopedia brain access to where he could pull that information. If he didn't, he had the book or access to that knowledge, or was within 1 degree of separation of it. And as a patient, at my time dealing with my Gulf War syndrome, which was, still very, and still is very, what are the actual causes. He was the doctor who said, okay, let's document this. Let's understand it. Let's look at your use of medical cannabis alongside with it in such a natural and organic, and as if life breath were everything. For me, after being physically kicked out of the VA multiple times, it was finally coming home for the first time. And I can never thank Dr. Todd enough for his knowledge, his expertise, but his compassion, his empathy. He was such a nice guy, and he had such a deep, relaxing voice that you could also, he was perfect. I mean, I know he wasn't perfect as a human. We're all human, but just as that.
He was a very inspirational person to me too. When I met him, I was blown away. I had gotten this book at Jack's house, and it had so much information in it. And then when I met him, he was just so full of energy. I mean, that's the one thing about Jack and Dr. Todd McCormick. They both really pissed you off when they explained everything to you. They really fired you up and made you want to go do something about what they really made you feel like was stolen from you. Information that you should have been able to learn in school, you didn't have the opportunity to learn. And then they told the government, being they, tell you you're a criminal for pursuing. Can I ask a little bit about this? I want to ask about Haze, Sam. When did you first see Haze?
Let me think. It must have been 1970.
70. And it was called Haze?
Yes. And it was called Pho Haze. It was grown by a grower up in the Santa Cruz Hills. And then he moved down to Santa Cruz, and him and a friend of his both grew it. And his friend is the one who made the poster, the original Haze, which had an eagle on it. It was pretty well known. I mean, it was in the underground, it was well known. And so that went on for maybe another decade or so until the end of the 70s. And
what drew you to the Haze? What about it?
It was the finest cannabis I had ever smoked in my life. It was just, there was purple haze, and there was silver blue, and there was green, and so there was a bunch of different colors, and they had slightly different terpene smells. I mean, I can remember one that smelled just exactly like root beer, and I could smell other, whatever. The end effect was it was frighteningly strong. I mean, I would see people take one puff off a joint, and they would turn white and fall down.
Wow. Well, you had it for a while, and this Haze,
what's that?
Haze often has higher THC levels than what we call indicas.
I think it might have slightly high THC levels, but it also just has the right terpene combinations. Terpene
modulation is key.
Yeah, I mean, because with the right kind of haze, the effects, there is no ceiling. So every time you take a puff, you get higher. It's, most cannabis, you reach a point where, I mean, you could smoke more and you'll get more stoned, but you won't get higher.
What were the countries of origin of Haze? Do you know?
Yeah, it's Colombian. It was gold Colombian, Punta Rojos, red Colombian, which would be pretty dark, and that made purple. And there was also a mauve colored Colombian. So it's 3 different pure Colombian lines that he saved from, really good Colombian smoke his buddies had brought. And then he crossed those 3 he wasn't a breeder, he was a grower. So he grew them, crossed them, and within a few years, during that time, they had F1 vigor like crazy. Giant flower bracts covered with resin. And then it became sort of inbred. And to really bring out the best in haze, you almost have to cross it with something else to make a hybrid, because that restores vigor. And it can be some pretty amazing hybrids I've seen out there. Neville's Haze is actually a hybrid with Northern Lights. I think he back-crossed it twice to Haze, so it's mostly Haze, but it's got enough Northern Lights in it to give it serious hybrid vigor, and people like it a lot.
How tall did those original hazes grow, or how long did he veg them, or just throw them right out there?
Well, they were growing under sunlight in a greenhouse, so they were not more than about 10 feet tall. But a lot of times, too, is I would have a haze sitting in a container, and because you could pull, say, skunk by the end of September or beginning of October.
Hey, Todd, what was that haze that grew up to that third story that I was at the castle?
Well, back then it would have been something I got from Neville, because it was when I was home from Amsterdam. And Neville had given me haze when we played chess, and he gave me seeds when we played chess. But I mean, Neville, in all reality, he begot his haze collection from you, Sam. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
What year did you get Neville haze seeds?
85.
Oh wow! So quite a while ago. Wow. So you when did you start growing haze?
76, 77. I'm not sure. It was in the mid 70s.
In the mid 70s. Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, right. I feel that way too.
I never really bred haze. What I did was I tried to preserve as many genes by keeping as many males and females around, so that I wasn't losing the genes. But they definitely got watered down, because the original ones were way, way better. It's pure haze, and with enough plants grown, you can do good selection, or you have to make hybrids with it. And then it's amazing, because, for example, you can have a haze which is, say, 10% THC, and you cross it with a skunk which is 16, 17 at the very best percent THC. And children pop out that are 23%.
Sam, you've lived this history, and you've watched it happen, and you're watching it change, and you're watching it change before your eyes now. So you've seen you've been one of the perpetuators of genetics. Where do you see these bastardizations, and where do you see cannabis going now that everything has been released? Everything is out there in the ether.
Well,
we've got all these bastards. We don't have these F1s anymore. Where do you see things going?
That's not true. I mean, you can still try to find landrace genetics. I mean, it's just not true at all. And some people preserve and keep pretty good landrace genetics. So those are unique and different. And if you cross an Afghan with a Thai, or an Afghan with an Equatorial, then you're probably going to get some interesting F1 to do selections from.
Right, there's still a lot.
And if that doesn't create enough selections, variety for your selections, make F2s out of the F1s. I guarantee you'll see every breakdown possible between them.
Right, and
the mother or father, I mean.
Right.
But that still doesn't answer where do you see it going. I know where you'd like to see it go.
I really don't know. I mean, when last time I looked, there was like 100 seed companies. Now I know there's got to be 500. And if there's 500 seed companies, how many of those people are, I mean, how many are truly competent to be able to understand genetics and proper seed conservation, preservation, or making good, dependable hybrids?
Right.
But I will admit, with what we do have, it has worked for a lot of people. And, lots of people out there really like the plants they have, whether they made them themselves or they bought them from a shop.
So, really what you're saying is a lot of these, if they're, are shuffling from the same deck and they're all working with basically nothing
the most
unique.
popular way to make seeds today is you find a really good clone that somebody has, a female. Then you find another female, and then you STS it, and one of them, and you make male pollen with that, cross it to the other one, because if you're crossing really good clones, the odds are, if you're crossing two really good female clones, the odds are the progeny will probably be at least good to really good to maybe even great.
Right.
So it's easy, it's fast, but it creates this interrelated multi-poly hybrid.
Right. And less people have unique varieties and are making pure F1s. And
Well, we just saw that with the Khalifa Haze. They just gene mapped it and found out it's just Haze. It's not, all he did is just put his necessary name on it. So I think we're going to see a unfortunate proliferation of bad genes out there, or misrepresentation of genetics out there.
None of the genes are bad.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's just we're not, as he's saying, we're not seeing competent breeders breeding as much as you're seeing just people just taking what's already out in the ether, doing some minor tweakings, and then saying it's their genetic and then putting it out there.
I think the most popular thing is if somebody has a straight male-female variety, they will grow some females of it, self it, and then sell all female blah 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 weed, which the name really belongs to somebody else.
Sam, what year did Flying Dutchman start?
What's that?
Do you remember the Flying Dutchman?
Yes.
Ben ended up buying them. Do you remember what year they began?
I
remember meeting
sometime in the 90s, but I think the early 90s, but I don't remember exactly. Maybe it was 94, 5. I really don't know. Somewhere between 92 and 5, I guess.
Yeah. So the haze they had most likely came from Sensi and Ben and Neville, because Ben ended up buying the Flying Dutchman afterwards.
No, that's not true.
Isn't that the one on the red light that's open with the light on?
What's that?
Yeah, I think it is true. Go ahead. You don't think that Ben bought the Flying Dutchman?
No, I think Ben did find the Dutchman. I'm just saying they weren't getting their seeds from Neville.
The haze, you mean?
None of their seeds.
Okay. Because somebody brought up that they had a pure haze, and I was thinking, well, I was trying to think of when the Flying Dutchman started, and I figured they started after 85. They started after Neville, of course. So where did they get the seeds from? Because at that time, the only source of haze seeds was you and Neville.
Yes, except for that the owner of the Flying Dutchman is Eddie Rediker, and he's a good friend of mine.
I couldn't remember Eddie's name, saved my life. Yeah. I met Eddie when I first went to the Cannabis Cups, 94, 95, 97.
He's a really nice old cannabis warrior.
He is. And they put the light in the window in the corner. So when you're walking down the street, there's a 600-watt high-pressure sodium with light. It's just really great. And Ben continued it, actually. It's still there today, I believe.
Here's an interesting thing in the ICM journal, that capsaicin was useful in the treatment of cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, where they applied actual capsaicin to the skin to actually stave off the nausea and vomiting associated with that. Because I know we've talked about hyperemesis in the past, which is the vomiting which can be induced.
I've seen other articles over the last decade that relate CB1 and CB2 receptors to capsaicin receptors, and there's some sort of interplay react thing going on.
Because I've seen also that people, if you get too high on cannabis, using black pepper helps. But it's interesting for it says that the cannabis use may cause state of nausea and vomiting, so-called cannabis hyperemesis syndrome. The vanilloid, vanilloid 1 receptor may be involved in this syndrome. In 13 patients with this syndrome, The authors applied capsaicin, which binds to the TRPV1 and to the skin, which resulted in an improvement of their symptoms. And this is from UMass Medical School out of Worcester. Pardon me. Isn't that pronounced Worcester there, Todd?
That's right. You've never been to the Worcester Centrum?
I've been to Worcester. I pronounced it wrong the whole time I was there. I call it Worcester.
But you're actually trying to say what you saw. How
Exactly.
Foolish. How
Well,
foolish.
well, that's how I'm from Louisiana. It's the same thing down there. Champagne, champagne, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, I feel you.
So can I ask you, Sam, when you were growing haze, how long did you let a lot of those varieties grow, like the haze by haze?
Every different one was different. I mean, I'm talking from like Christmas to April the 1st under natural photo period in Santa Cruz.
Wow.
Protected in a greenhouse.
Wow. So what's the longest flowering time you've ever seen for a cannabis plant?
I think one of those, April 1st was what I called joke weed. It was really good. It was actually really nice cannabis, but I mean, April the fucking 1st. Give me a break.
So you're saying this is as a greenhouse grower, you're
Yeah,
saying usually you would harvest
planted
October, November, December.
I planted it probably October.
And so how many weeks? So like when you break down, so is 16 weeks of indoor flowering the longest a plant would flower for? What's the longest indoor flowering time a plant would have? If skunk finishes flowering in about 8 weeks.
I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure. But I was thinking like 25 or something.
25 weeks. Wow. For the really,
but it needs to be in the proper environment, more like an equatorial photoperiod system where, the lights aren't going radically different. You don't want to bring it, from 12 hours or 18 hours down to 10 hours or something like that. I don't think it's good but you could speed up a narrow leaf drug variety by doing that, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Right. I think for the longer varieties, the best advice I ever got was from Neville, and it was just don't give it any pre-grow time. And that has worked for me. And I've seen my friends do it too, that Neville told it to directly, which was straight. Once it gets roots, pop it into flowering, and it just jumps up after a little while and goes. So, you can save a lot of time and save yourself a headache if you're growing a sea green method. But growing in a greenhouse, but now even the greenhouses that they're light depping, it's just like, these massive, almost indoor grow rooms at this point, because they're able to just light dep the whole time and feed the thing plants perpetually. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's hard to use those year-round in all areas, though, because they use lights when if they need them. They use supplemental lights, and in a lot of areas now, agricultural lighting has to meet all kinds of state and county and city. In other words, they don't want you dumping light into the sky.
What's up, Darren?
Hey, D.
Hello, guys. Can you
How
hear
are you
me?
doing? Yeah, we can. You're a little quiet.
Are we gonna do a bong rip or what? Let's do a bong rip.
Yeah.
Or what?
How do you do that?
You take the dab tool, put it in the gear, scoop it out like so, put it in the bong. Apply carb cap.
What temperature do you run your D nail at? I mean, your E nail at there?
707.
I'm doing mine about 650. Yeah, 650. Todd likes his are in the 500s, 550. What do you like your dabs at? When you do dabs, Sam, what temperature do you do, or do you do dabs?
Well, I can also do dry sipped, but it's I think it's 400, but maybe that's centigrade. I don't have the slightest fucking idea. I know that's what I like it at.
I don't have this play. Well, I was doing it. Etienne and I were hitting ours at about 710 Fahrenheit to be cute. And then it was just fucking hot on my throat. And I started doing them in the 6s. And then I started waiting until the head was getting to be basically 600 or less. And I like it.
Lots of flavor when it's at that point.
What is 400 centigrade? I suspect that's what mine is.
That's probably 800 to 900 or something like that.
Really that high? No.
Well, you are doing dry sift, so the higher for the dry sift. I mean, unless you're doing really low puddles. But
I thought I was doing a low one, but what do I know?
Where's Mark at?
he's at the Lift conference. He's popped in and he stepped out. I think he had to go deal with some things there, and then he's going to pop back in. That's why Todd's running the show.
I'm not running anything. I'm just a little in. But it's 752 degrees, sir. You should actually cool it down.
That's what mine is. It's 752.
Yeah, you should put it down to 343. That would make it 650 degrees Fahrenheit.
I had it at 350 before, but it does what I call dribble. It doesn't finish it off in a single hit. I got to take a bunch of small hits, and I prefer one big, large one. Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am.
At 350, you're at 662.
That's why I got mine at 708 or 710 type thing. I like a good, like, not a hot night hit, but less than that.
Yeah, 710 Fahrenheit, Sam, would be 376.
Yeah, I agree that lower temperatures give better taste, but they dribble on.
Well, I do two things with this now. So now I actually turn it on. I leave my D-nail now at like 900 degrees, and I let it just heat all the way up to 900 and just burn off everything.
We both know what we need.
And then I turn it off.
We need one that starts at 350 centigrade, and then over the next 10 seconds, jerks up to 400.
And I turn it off.
We need one that starts at 350 centigrade, and then over the next 10 seconds, jerks up to 400.
Nice feedback, Darren.
It starts at 350.
You gotta turn down your volume, bro.
Over the next.
That's why we use headphones, bro.
That was hilarious. The bong hit is working.
I was like, wow, it's like Sam's like echoing, like Sam's echoing, like Sam's echoing, like
That was good.
It sounded vaguely familiar.
How's that?
Yeah, you cool.
Did a bong rip, man. I got kind of lost there for a second.
My first one of the day. It's more of a challenge to sit here and do reps and try to actually have this conversation sometimes, though, because
I have a story. I have a story for everybody from last weekend. I entered a cup, the Okanagan Cup. I entered some dry sift. I entered some bubble hash. And I entered some rosin. And I was the only solventless entry at the place. The rest was all BHO and CO2 and whatever. There's stuff. And, I had a lot of really good responses from everybody, and it was a really good time. And I was expecting to actually I was hoping to get third place or something like that. And I didn't place at all. And the guys that did win were all the guys that placed were all in concentrated, all solvent products. And what I learned is that everybody really loves the solventless product, but they're not that educated on it. They don't know. Like there's, we do our thing here and stuff like that. And there's stuff on Bubble Man's World that we do as well and expose and try to educate. But there's a really large sum of people that aren't educated on it, because what they're just starting to learn these days is the BHO and the shatters and the butters, and that stuff's blowing their minds. And the stuff that I made was absolute unbelievable fire. Like I really put some time into it, and I was disappointed I didn't place, but I learned a lesson on fucking education needs to be more. So I'm gonna be like,
I would say don't take that personally, because it's not about quality, it's about popularity. And
Yeah.
a lot of people, when they don't know what they're looking at, wouldn't know how to judge what they were looking at if they saw it. So
yeah, they really loved it. There was every time that somebody took a toke, it was like, one guy looked at me, goes, "I could fucking kiss you, man." And I was like, "Dude, don't do it." But good people and everything. It was a really good time. And all the guys the people that placed and everything, really good guys. And I think they were venom extracts is what they were called. Venom extracts, or venom and Pura Vida. And
right.
another.
And I think there is also a situation where it's availability, bro, because to people who grow,
Yes.
we see this stuff and we appreciate the that very gentle resin drop. It's just incredible. But for the consumer, man, that stuff's not accessible to them. They don't see what we see, so they don't have the reverence we have. Look at what you're sitting next to, for instance.
Oh, buddy.
Yeah. This whole screen setup.
And
and you got to understand is that also these kids are seeing that it's easier to blast than it is to actually go through the process of dry sifting. I mean, it's a process to it, but you've also educated a great deal because you've done it firsthand. D, you've done it firsthand, and I got to give you a hell of a lot of respect for that. But it also shows you that more. Yes, you're right. More people need to learn about it. Yes, be more education.
Down to. And it's got to be affordable too, but it's hard to make it affordable when it takes 2.25 pounds of bud to make 28 grams of beautiful dry sift. And that stuff there, we didn't have to use it all, and I gave the rest of it back to my bro's wife that we grow that strain for. And it's locomotion strain. It's real tangy and really good strain, and it really helps her Parkinson's in a huge way. And it's so we only smoked about 5 of those grams or something like that, and everybody loved the bubble hash and the rosin. It was fire products, and those guys had some good gear too. I smoked all of their stuff too. It wasn't like it was just a BHO party. These guys did the right job too. It was nice shit. And good people.
I think
good
BHO
vibes.
is great. It's my chosen. I like it over, honestly, even dry sift, to be honest, because you get more of it. That is more of the essence of the plant than any other way of processing. And somebody asked, why does PHO have that funny color? And it's weird because you can see propane hash oil from a mile away, so to speak. It just tints it. It's almost, I think, like a burn, like a cold burn.
Cold burn, yes.
Yeah, because propane boils off at negative 200 or something, whereas butane boils off at 30 degrees. So I think that it's just the way that it interacts with the oils. It's probably like a cold oxidization.
Yeah, it's got to be some sort of oxidization to an extent, but it's ever so slight. It doesn't really change further, but it's definitely, as you say, you can see it a mile away.
Yeah, I think it has a funny taint to me. I'm not the biggest fan of propane hashed oil products, to be honest. Not in its pure form. I understand that a lot of companies use it as their base, and then they do it to do their separations of THCA or CBDA and things like that. But and in that they say it's really good because it pulls at everything.
The other part too with the competition is it was a concentrates competition, and in the concentrates competition there should be different categories, and that's one of the things we're learning as well, and what we talked about with the guy that threw the event MMJ in Vernon, and they it'll be I'd like to do a solventless category, a shatter category, a butter category, split them up a little bit, right? But all in all, man, it was a fucking incredible good time. I had a great time. I lost my sunglasses at one point, and they're not cheap sunglasses at all.
Well, you're also seeing competitions do this, D, where they're actually separating out. Or is that there's the BHO competition, there's a solventless, which is good, but it also shows, Chalice does it. Others, High Times now does it. Now they're separating even CBD categories now as well. So It's good that, for all these different ways of producing that they are, but I've also seen, a water in a secret cup that was absolutely stunning compared to, BHOs as well. So I've seen phenomenal products from both, and that is both smell just as wonderful. But I still have to lean like Todd. I lean toward the BHO again, but because I also have more access to it. I don't grow tons of plants and things like that, as you say, to have access to that amount of cannabis to do such things. But it doesn't mean that we don't appreciate it in any way, shape, or form, because it's.
I love the shatters and the butters too, man. Like the Pura Vida guys have some flavor. This tropical fucking thunder or something like that they had was unbelievable. I went back 3 or 4 times and had a couple of bong rips off of them. Like it was killer.
Yeah, it can be. It's what we see out here is incredible. And in places like Berkeley, the city has mandatory testing, so there can't be anything over 400 parts per million.
We should go back all of this BHO and dry sift and everything talk. Let's just have a bong rip. Let's do it. Come on. Bong rip.
I can do this. Sam, are you doing your bong rip?
What did you say?
Oh,
what are you token on there, Sam, by the way?
Angie.
I've heard you say that quite a few times. That must be one of your favorites there. Or what's going on with that? Sam?
It's pretty tasty. The effects are pretty good. And a friend of mine had a lot of it.
Nice. Well,
emphasize the last part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That part, yes. Oh, yeah. For sure.
What do you like to smoke on, bro? What do you put in your pipe most of the time, Darren?
Well, I like rosin, and like I have my own crops, right? Like I do my own medical show, so I make my own stuff out of it, and I love my dry sift. I like taking really good dry sift and squeezing it out and smoking it.
What are your returns when you press rosin?
Actually,
I got like eight more questions, so.
Depends on the bud that I'm using. Some is really good, some is very poor. But it all works out that you can get your money's worth.
Do you have a range on the low side? What do you see that you're disappointed with, and how much press? Okay, so you grind it up, you stick it in your little sock. How much do you grind up? How much do you press at a time?
No grinding. I just stuff the sock full of bud, stuff it, put it in another bag, 2 bags, and then I put it in my little pocket. I like 100.
You put 2 grams of buds, non-ground up in the bag.
Yeah.
2 grams?
No, about an ounce.
A fucking ounce. Oh, okay. So is an ounce like 28, 30 grams?
Yeah, you bet.
And then you squish it, and then all right. So how much oil do you get out of an ounce of bud?
Well, if I'm using a chemo hash plant cross that we got,
yeah,
out of an ounce of bud, I could get about 3 to 5 grams out of it.
Totally squishing. What temperature do you do that at?
First, and that's with two presses though. The first press is a side, and then the second squish after they're put together is a side too for medibles and stuff like that. So you get about an average 3 to 5 grams per.
So you think your second squish is a little hotter, is what you're saying?
Same temperature, but I do it later on when all of them are done. I'll just blast them off and get them all done on the first presses, keep them separate, and then I'll run the other ones again.
What temp do you press at? Can I ask?
That's a trade secret. No, I'm just kidding. That's I always wanted to say that. I was varying it. Fuck, that was good bong rip. So let me just catch my breath. But the temperature I'm at is like 118, 117.
Celsius or Fahrenheit?
I'm not really sure about that on that.
Sam over here. I don't know. That is great.
I get so fucked up with that fucking metric system or whatever, conversion. But the temperature I keep it on is 118. 117 is the nice. I set it for 120, 125, but it stays at 117, 18.
If that's Celsius, that's at 244 degrees.
Well, how is it? Is it Fahrenheit then?
That's 118 in Celsius would be 244 Fahrenheit. That sounds fucking hot. So I have a feeling.
Yeah, it's probably then Fahrenheit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're gonna go with that.
It's the lower the temp. Yeah.
It's not too hot to touch, right? If you touch it, it won't totally burn you, right?
No, but you can't keep.
So it's not. So you're using Fahrenheit. We're gonna go with 118 Fahrenheit.
I had check this out. I had some stuff in Barcelona from this cat from Ireland who is pressing at 80 degrees Fahrenheit.
Well, I did that as well, and it come out like absolutely white butter.
That's what it was.
And what a terp fucking! I don't know if it's all fats and waxes, and then the terps.
But it's tasty.
Fucking tasty, yes. But low yield. Low yield.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask. What was the yield? Because I didn't discuss yield with him.
You see, when I was doing it on the temperature going higher, like it was like I was up to like 180 or as high as it'll go. And it fucking, I pressed some hash, and there's a video I had fucking on my Instagram or something somewhere on my Facebook, and I showed it, and it was just the rosin was just spitting and hissing and spraying out. It was so hot. It just ran out like fucking liquid. I was surprised, and I was like, fuck, maybe that's the wrong temperature. So then
doesn't it have a popcorny kind of flavor at that temperature as well?
Well, I was using some really good bubble hash, and it still had some good flavor to it and everything, but it did have a heavy heat taste to it for sure.
I equate it with kind of like that popcorn, popcorn kernel flavor.
Yeah, I hear you, but it was a little more terpy still, but it wasn't what it could be at the proper temperature.
And I'm meaning people is more the aftertaste that's left in your mouth afterwards.
I'm kind of thinking that leaning towards squishing flour more than washing it and then pressing it than anything, because you seem to get better quality product and better color and everything else.
Is that what you're finding through your experiment?
Yep.
And you've been experimenting with it for a couple of years now.
Well, I have been, but I still actually don't have enough material to really experiment like I want to as well, right? But
we never have enough material.
I know. That's the chase, right?
Right.
And what makes better rosin? Squished dried bud or squished dry sift?
Oh, the squished sift is
it's just can I ask what is the material that makes up the membrane around the oil of the trichome?
Isn't that wax?
Yeah, it's natural plant wax, correct.
Yeah.
Wow.
The waxy membrane, as it's known.
Yeah.
And there's also a couple of cells, maybe a half dozen or a dozen, whatever, of plant cells in the stem at the top and at the bottom. So there's a little bit of mass in that, but the resin is the weight.
Can you get the oil out and separate it from the membrane?
Sure, with winterizing and all that kind of stuff with your ethanol, I guess.
As long as the cells were
Not with ethanol.
ruptured in some way, yes. You could use, for example, ultrasonic.
Ultrasonic hash will be the stuff our kids are making, I'm sure, right now.
Ultrasonic hash.
Yeah, why haven't we talked about that before, right?
Ultrasonic hash. Is that like there's so you got this?
We used it in our laboratory, where what we would do is put dried buds that had been desiccated overnight in a desiccator, and then grind it up, put it in a tube with, say, ethanol, and then ultrasonic it for if you do it for 30 seconds, you get about 85% of the THC, but you get none of the chlorophyll color, so it comes out a beautiful yellow gold color. The longer you do it, you get all the THC, but you also start getting chlorophylls, and it'll come out like a dark reddish oil.
Well, you know, this is the beauty of what butane has given us, and it's been able to pull our oils without pulling the chlorophyll. So instead of getting, you know, anything with green, we're getting just the oils, just the terpenes. So it's really, really nice.
Dry sift, you get the same thing, no green.
But unfortunately, with a lot more work and a lot less yield, you know, that's the downside.
No, I have hundreds of people working for me. That's all they do, year in and year out.
Right. I always figured Santa had
because I
help.
smoke a lot each day.
No, it's true. But yeah, how much time do you feel like it takes you to actually make the stuff that you entered?
For what I entered this last chapter,
Yep.
well, the dry sifting took me to make an ounce out of 2 1/4 pounds. I had to get it down to farmer grade sift and then separate it and static tech it and everything. It took about a good 36 hours, 40 hours.
Can I throw this by you? You know, you should try grinding up your material before you put that ounce in the bag, because you'll expose more of the area and you'll actually probably improve your yield. And leaving it whole is trapping a lot of the oils inside of the, developed flower material. And when I take the flowers apart, I normally shoot my macro shots with the inside of the flowers and not the outside, because that's where the resin glands have developed and been like unmolested, so to speak, or undamaged by the bag or fingers or whatever. And all of that stuff that's on the inside, which is really beautiful oils, you're kind of, you're trapping inside of this big sponge filter of vegetable material. You know what I'm saying? But if you ground it all up so that it was all even, you're not going to really damage the resin powder. You know that. And then you just, I would say give it a shot, and I would love to know if it makes a big difference ground up.
Well, I've done that. I have done that. But what I like to do is I like to take the best heads first, and then I'll water hash the rest of the product, and I can wash it 4 or 5 times and get the rest of the product out of it, get nice amount of hash, and I can put that into the cooking and everything else as well. I definitely don't just get that 1 ounce out of the 2 1/4 pounds. I get 1 ounce of good heads. The rest goes into coconut oils and everything else, right?
Can I say this though? Dare I ask, what happens to all the pot? Like, is it just thrown away at that point? I mean,
after it's been cooked off in the coconut oil or the once it's been washed and everything, yeah, it's tossed. Yeah.
Yeah. In Amsterdam in the mid '90s, the big sin that we felt a lot of people were doing was bouncing the buds before they sold them on the market.
Oh, yes,
you get all these buds that were thrashed and didn't have resin on them, on the outside at least, and it was very unattractive to somebody using a
definitely going to have a little microscope when you're looking at nice amounts of weed that you want to make hash out of and stuff that other people are growing that want to give to you to do this, because if you can check it, look, and you can see if it's been machine trimmed or hand trimmed or any of that stuff, you can tell with that microscope. And there ain't no way I would touch machine trimmed weed.
You want to know if it's been machine skimmed or hand skimmed?
That's right. You bet.
Right. I like untouched. As someone who grows his own, I really like it to be, I don't even like me touching it. You know what I'm saying? I want it to be just as it is.
Yeah, so, and have screens under all the drying buds just for the resin heads that happen to fall at the right time and place too. It's just, I'd like to have a whole room of drying screens, but underneath the hanging buds, right? Eventually, that costs money too. Eventually, it comes.
What year did you start dry sieving your flowers, Sam?
1985.
What got you into dry sieving? That sounds kind of late in
Well,
comparison to how you started growing.
I had done it earlier also in California, but not to any real extent. Well, it's just that I had access to a lot of underneath what people were manicuring. So I gave them a screen. They manicured on top of it, and then I got either all, if they weren't interested, or half or whatever of the resin that was collected underneath these screens, because I was the first one to explain how to use these things and what they were for, and in the Netherlands anyway.
Did you go right into particle separation equipment like the WS?
Oh, I did myself, yes, because these the hand screens are just too slow. I mean, you can do it much faster than that long, but first you have to have ground up dry material, and once you have that, then you can actually do it fairly fast. But yeah, with machines, it's hundreds of kilos a day.
Right.
It's for just one or two people.
Sure. And when what we're talking about is if people don't get it, it's dry sifting sieves are sold by companies like W.S. Tyler's and American Standard, and they come in various mesh sizes. So I would, back in the 90s when I was buying them, thanks to the information I got from Sam and Rob, I was putting up 150 mesh screens on top and 60 mesh screens on the bottom. And what I would do is put my cannabis on the top, and in between I would have different size sieves. And I had a machine called a roto tap, which would just shake the shit out of the thing. And it was rather loud and annoying, but you put it in another room and it would just particle separate your resin glands, and it works amazing. I mean, because different harvests would give me different size resin glands.
Different varieties also, some of the tropical sativas, as people call them, narrow leaf drug varieties, they have much smaller resin heads. They have really long resin heads, some of them, but they're a bit smaller. But some of them, I really like them.
Yeah, no, it was the best way to do it. I actually have a small little cans. I used to give them away to my friends as gifts to turn them on to the art of dry sieving, because a lot of people didn't know what they were doing or what the concept was. But when they saw the sieves in front of them and they saw me doing it, they were like, oh, that makes clean sense. There's
one major obstacle to dry sifting, and that's the price of raw materials. As soon as raw materials get down cheap enough, when it's $100 a kilo or less, then people can afford to grind up a few kilos to make enough stash to last a week or a month or whatever.
Well, I look forward to more and more people being able to grow their own stuff, because as they do, I believe we're going to get into a situation where you're going to see this, like what Rob Clark calls farmer's hash, in the hands of more people. And, this is going to help everyone, in my opinion. I think everyone will benefit from it. I think everyone will love it. I actually have one of those sieves still. Hold
on. I had one that did the same thing, but it used ultrasonic energy.
That would be sweet. Yeah, they have vibrators for those now. Yeah, there's the whole little setup. I remember those. You're on mute, Todd.
Hey, the dabs, they are working. Well, look, everybody, these are W.S. Tyler sieves. This is the American Standard sieves I used to give to my friends. This is the 150 mesh size. And in this size, you would put even your cannabis. I have a bunch of dry sieve. And then you clean it up, because then this would be your 60 mesh screen. This would be the smaller resin glands. So your resin glands are between 60 and 150 microns in size. And then this bottom one is actually the trash. This is what the little parts of plant material fall through into. and the non-glandular trichomes, the little stalks that the heads are on, dump into this over time. And this will turn green. This will be gold.
I did a GC test of the 3 different fractions, and the bottom fraction was, depending on the variety, was just 1 or 2 or 3% THC. The bottom trash fraction, and the top one was there was nothing left on the top. Now that I think about it.
Well, if you were
if I used whole herb or something, there was,
right.
But I dumped it off. Yes,
I got the sizes from Rob when he was doing the book Hashish, and that's where I got, because I asked him what's the largest size resin gland, and he said about 150 microns. I said
that's absolutely correct,
and he said it's 60. So I went and got those sizes, but I also bought all the sizes that would fit in between.
Right. I get the picture. Every different variety and every different growing conditions made them fraction out in different levels. And the best one was, you found it.
Yeah, and then it would reveal itself in the shake. And it was great. And, you know, I recommend it to you because I see you sitting there all the time, Darren, doing it. But, I mean, honestly, this is what was my party gift at my house 20 years ago. And there's nothing like it. I mean, because not only do you get your heads, I would get 70, 80, 90, 100 micron heads, and it would be amazing. Because like I would liken it to apple picking when I was a kid, because sometimes the 3-inch apples were perfect to eat, but the 2-inch apples were like hard and good to throw at your friends, and the 4-inch apples were squishy and had worms. It was kind of like that with the resin heads, and the different plants dump at different.
If you take pictures of it and you do just one fraction, say 100, then all of the resin heads look exactly the same size.
Everybody can still get these. These are available as scientific equipment. All this is dry seeding particle separation equipment. That's all I'm showing you. You can pick this stuff up through catalogs. You can get it online.
And they're available in brass, stainless steel, and gold.
What's the purity level of the resin heads?
Gold, but the ones that W.S. Tyler were, I had the brass ones that looked gold, if you remember. But
yeah, I remember those.
They had those were usually stainless steel sieves, and then like this one was the stainless steel with the stainless steel sieves. They were food grade.
The purity depends on the material that you start with. If you're starting with farmer's hash and there's a lot of leaf debris that's the same size as a resin head, it's harder to separate that.
Right, because then the green material has to break up and fall down to under 60 microns in size, or it will contaminate your product. So the nicest thing to do is to do what Sam did, which was do an initial dry screen drop, take all of that resin, put it on the top of your dry sieve separator, and then just separate down as it vibrates. Yeah, it's really the shit, to be honest. That's a good question. When did static separation come into the picture, Sam?
It was developed by the guy who was doing it with first like an envelope or a credit card, and then a DVD, and yeah, I mean you can ask if Bubbleman was here, he could probably give you the exact dates, but I'm not exactly aware.
I can tell you.
Okay, there you go.
When I was doing my dry sift videos, when I was starting it, learning it from Mark and Johnny, I was using an iTunes card, and whatever plastic that material was made out of, one side a contaminant stuck to, and one side resin head stuck to. And I'd brush one side off and the other side off in separate piles, and then keep cleaning. And I cleaned it up really good that way, but it took a long, long time. And then there was a guy on YouTube called Mies McCallman, and he tried doing it. He was watching the credit card, or the iTunes card, I mean. And you can do it with a lot of different cards too. It's not just the iTunes. You can experiment and find ones that'll do it. But you can take what he took was a CD case and wrapped it with parchment paper, and then took his farmer's grade hash and then worked it. And as he worked it, the static on that parchment paper stuck just like the resin heads on the iTunes card, but a massive amount.
Yeah, and that basically allowed the world to get hashish that's similar to the quality that I've been producing for 20 years. And it's
Similar, but not,
it takes longer, it's a bit slower, but I've seen people who use that cassette method with parchment paper to produce hash that was so fucking amazing. I couldn't have believed it.
I've got instructional videos on my YouTube channel on how I do that. And one of the things that I learned with this competition is people need more education and stuff like that. And I'm just going to make more videos on what I'm doing with it myself. Cause I took paperback books. I took Game Boy game cases. I took DVD cases, CD cases, all.
I already did it with a Samsonite suitcase.
Samsonite suitcase.
No, I'm just fucking with you.
You fucking kill me, Sam. That's awesome. Let's do a bong rip. It's been too long. Come on. Bong rip. Everybody. Come on.
I think they just need to have categories, because if things are judged in its own lane, you can appreciate it for what it is. It's really hard to judge cross platforms, and I think that it's not appropriate. And as much as I like the competitions for the community element, I think they're bullshit, and they've always been bullshit. They don't, they don't represent what the best in the market is, because the best in the market isn't always wasting its time putting itself in competitions.
Well, you know what I like the most about it was the people and the help and everybody that was participating in all of it. It was a really good event, and it was good. It was a good time. That's it. I agree with you. We talked about that at the end. We're gonna next year. There's gonna be a solventless category, a BHO category, stuff like that, and in Canada here, there are some incredible extract artists doing dry sifts and bubble hash and rosin here in Canada that are just fucking phenomenal. So if we could get a solventless category going like that, and maybe start
not only just solventless, but you really want it like water hash, dry sift,
yes,
rosin.
Sure, you bet. Separate
from either mud or the other two. I mean, that's what's really fair. Those should compete with each other. Maybe there is a solventless
Chalice does
winner,
that.
But
does that. Secret Cup kind of did that, but even in the finals, one year Water Hash beat out BHO and all the other extractions for the number one, which surprised everybody, and it was just because it was so spectacular.
Emerald Cup also does the different categories. Speaking of, they're actually Emerald Cup is actually throwing, as you were requesting, Todd, a summer event.
Yeah, I think it's great. The county fair.
The Cannabis County Fair is going to be going on at Sonoma County Fairgrounds in July. Is it, Todd?
Yes. Tim will come on. I'm sure. I'm going to send him a message again. Excuse me, everybody. And I'm sure Tim will join us before the event, maybe next week or the week after, if we can get him on to talk about it. But it's up at the Hog Farm, and it looks like it's going to be a blast. It's based towards organic farming and sustainability, and I applaud them for it, because a lot of the people, the old timers like Tim and the people around him that helped create the Emerald Cup, were all about sustainability. They were environmental stewards who really gave a shit about the land they lived on and the community they had. And I think it's been heart-wrenching for them to see, financial opportunists come up into their neck of the woods and start, cutting down redwood trees and deforesting and polluting water and estuaries in, the pursuit of profits. And this whole fair is taking on a very organic approach, And I really think that's great because, you know, a lot of the people who I met up in Mendocino when I was up there for the summer, when, you know, Humboldt County 20 years ago, well, it's even more now, but they were all really kind, considerate. They were the type of people that were trying to stop redwood deforestation. You know, they weren't the ones that were worried about how shiny, you know, their new car was. And I'm really glad that there's this core group of people there that are trying to kind of promote that to the community. And I think it's fantastic. I hope a lot of people tune into that and tune into the fact that, you know, we as a community have to really be considerate about the environment around us as we start to expand our grow operations and, you know, bring cannabis to the masses. Sorry. Save the trees. Okay. So what are you guys all smoking weed?
I'm smoking hash. Yep, I'm doing that all diddly day.
Hey, Sam.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I was gonna ask a question. I saw somebody inside ask, "What color was your haze, Sam?" You referred to different colors earlier.
Of the above, lime green, gold, mostly more green than gold though, and also purple and blue, silver blue. I can remember many different colors, and I've tried to preserve it all, but I would say it doesn't. It's not purple black like I used to see it. I did see some bluish individuals, put it that way.
Wow. Bluish plants.
Well, blueberries, isn't that also that way? Or is it more taste and smell than color? I'm not familiar.
It's more taste and smell than color.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm noticing that a lot. Like there's a variety I have now called chocolate hashberry, and it really has overtones of chocolate and overtones of berry. It's really quite astonishing. I love it. And I think we're going to see more and more of this kind of, you know, maybe this wasn't bred this way, but I think we're going to see more plants bred for the nuances that we can kind of tune into.
Well, you're seeing that with this that strawberry strain that's out there as well. You know, that's a popular one.
Yeah, picking up on the fruit tones, I think, are going to be huge. I mean, as we kind of expand the palette of cannabis by starting to select varieties that are over, you know, 8, 9, 10, 11 weeks in flowering, and that can go 12, 13, 14 weeks before we pull them, I think we're going to start experiencing different terpene selections and honestly different highs. Because when I got to Amsterdam and started smoking equatorial varieties, and I realized it was like drinking an espresso, I was pretty much into it. It was a great way to start my day and do a lot of cool stuff. So I'm looking forward to it.
Besides different unique terpene profiles from equatorial varieties, also what people are doing now too is they're selecting individuals that are highs, but really high in terpenes. I mean, traditional cannabis terpene level was 1% low, 2% average, 3% amazing. But now a bunch of the winners at the Emerald Cup and things like this are consistently the highest in terpenes, and they're approaching more like 5%. And if you take those individuals and you do extensive breeding with them, I've already seen reports of 10% from people who I believe. So, yeah, the future will be 5-10% for sure, maybe higher.
You know, I was talking to Ryan about this the other day, and he was talking about the move towards organic fertilizers. He's seeing higher terpene. If you're trying to grow cannabinoids and you're growing with synthetic fertilizers, mineral-based synthetic fertilizers, you're going to see really high cannabinoids. But when you're growing with organics, you're going to see higher terpene harvests. And I tend to believe him. I mean, I'm, you know, I've kind of gone to a mix myself, but I think that soil is definitely a very natural way to grow. And with more and more people trying to get into growing organically and back into soil, I think, you know, for a while, hydroponic gardening was, you know, the way to do it. You know, everybody had Grodan and slabs and, you know, Hydroton, and we saw great results. But now that we're kind of going to this back to the land kind of vibe in many respects, I think soil's taking over. And maybe it could well be because of the fragrance and the taste being so important in the final product.
Well, if you think about the best tomatoes you've ever had, they were probably number one, an heirloom variety, and number two, grown organically.
Right.
Hey, there's Marcus. Come on, step up and say something, dude.
Oh, he was there for a second. Oh, there he is.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
Hey, there you are.
We've been waiting for you. And it looks like we'll keep waiting.
Yeah, can you hear us, Mark?
He's on mute. You're on mute.
Let me try to unmute him. I don't think I can.
Yes, you're on Hash Church.
I cannot unmute him. I don't know what to say.
Hi,
But
Darren.
Hi, Darren. Wait, where do I even look? Like,
There you
oh,
go.
right there. I don't know who you are, but hi. I'm Darren.
Etienne.
It's embarrassing myself.
Exciting and new.
is that Steve? No. Hey, Mark, can you hear us?
I'm actually going to go to the hotel room right now, so I'll be back in about a minute, guys. We'll see you in about 5.
Okay. Well, that's cool.
So here's some more IACM news. Cannabis is used as a substitute for prescription drugs, according to a large survey. A survey of 2,774 participants reported having used cannabis at least once in the previous 90 days. About half said that they used cannabis as a substitute for prescription drugs. That came out of the Bastyr University research. The state of Washington allows self-cultivation of cannabis by patients. Governor signed legislation expanding patients' access to medical cannabis. New law for the first time allows registered patients to legally purchase cannabis seeds, clones, and immature plants from licensed providers. So the provisions in the law permit non-patients to legally share cannabis products with one another. So also the Foundation of Uruguayan Society of Endocannabiology press release, board of directors reported foundation in May of this year. Their main objectives are to disseminate knowledge and advance the endocannabinology in academic areas and in the general populations to promote the education, which is great. In Chile, citizens increasingly grow their own medical cannabis.
No,
Go
it's
Chile.
awesome. And Israel decriminalized.
Yeah. So in science,
That's a small thing, though, when you think about it, because
No.
I mean, it really influences a lot of people here in Congress and in the Senate, because they have to start looking at federal policy as being unworkable and not practical. Because if they're going to swim upstream against states, we saw a lot of backlash when Jeff Sessions just said that he wanted to basically recreate the drug war. And I think it's a good thing, because now prosecutors in various states are saying, no way, we're not going to be party of this bad play again. And I think that's fantastic. So I think that these victories are internationally, especially in places like Israel, where we have strong alliances, are going to be influential hugely in DC.
Yep, and as more as you see studies like this, activation of the CB2 receptor may improve stem cell-based therapies for heart disease. Heart disease is a huge problem, and this is out of China, so that's interesting. You know, any more of these studies that come out, it's going to be harder for them to, you know, deny that there is no medical efficacy, because people like Jeff Sessions are still using it, that there is no medical use, et cetera, and that's also why they're getting the backlash, because science is really proving it more and more all the time, and for them to constantly, you know, refute to that same old dogma doesn't hold water anymore. And I'm glad to see that there is pushback against Sessions and people like that for their, you know, willful misinformation that we've affected the ether to the point where even the reporters and academics are holding them to their, you know, their knowledge base, and their willful ignorance doesn't apply. So migraine is not associated with a generalized deficiency of endocannabinoids. A study of 26 healthy women and 36 with migraines, there were no difference in blood concentrations of endocannabinoids. Concluded that migraine is not associated with a generalized deficiency in these lipids. That's out of Sweden. Fun. Cannabis users seeking treatment differ from cannabis users in the general population. Researchers compared characteristics of cannabis users in a clinic who wanted to stop use with characteristics of users in the general population. The clinical setting, there were more often older adults, African Americans, Hispanic, Latinos, adults with more education, non-tobacco users, and daily and almost daily cannabis users out of University of South Carolina, Charleston. Endocannabinoids may reduce consequences of chronic reduced blood supply to the brain. The activation of the CB1 receptor may have negative effects during the development of the placenta. Interesting. That's out of Portugal. And genes involved in the transport, action, metabolism of cannabinoids. A new article gives an overview of genes of the human body involved in the endocannabinoid action, and lists a whole bunch of transporter genes. Receptor genes are CNR1, CNR2, TRPV1, and GPR55. Transporter genes, ABCB1, ABCG2, SLC6 alpha. Genes for proteins for biotransformation, biosynthesis, and bioactivation follow as CYP3A4, CYP2CI9, CYP2C9, CYP2A6, CYP1A1,
Here's all that.
COMT,
What is
FAAH.
all that? It doesn't make any sense. What are you reading?
These are the actual genes. They actually have names as actual receptors, and it is rather fascinating that the different transporter genes, the genes that are proteins, this is more academic, but they're actual. Yeah, I know you expect me to go C3PO.
No,
but
it's actually great.
That's out of Poland, so it just shows the all these different research that I just went through, or all these things that are happening all around the world currently.
Right, no, it's cool. I found actually the references to Ernest Abels because when I was doing the lectures in my home state, when Ernest Abel wrote Marijuana: The First 12,000 Years in '81, he was referring to the find in South China coast in Thailand, Taiwan Island of broadleaf hemp 12,000 years earlier. It was in post-glacial fissing sites, cored and pressed pottery, and his reference was 1963. But then a couple years later, it would have probably been a different title because the oldest piece of fabric of hemp was found in the Czech Republic, and it was a narrow-leaf hemp. Some 26,980 to 24,870 years BP, which basically means before present. It's the earliest impressions of plant fiber cordage, and that was found out in 1997. Is that the oldest, Sam, that you know of now?
That sounds about right to me, but I don't keep as current as Rob does. I just read about it when I read about it.
The oldest cannabis stash ever found is 2,700 years old, found in Mongolia's Gobi Desert in 2008. Can you tell us about that, Sam?
I wasn't involved, but I've read about it like everybody else.
What
was the last one that you were involved in that you were aware of?
I wasn't involved in any of these really, really old ones, but Rob has been sent samples, and so have I, of 1,000 or 2,000, or for example, the Scythian grave that was discovered in the Posrick excavations. I do have samples from the seeds, and Rob and I both collected both pollen and seed samples that are anywhere from 1,000 to several thousand years old. But we weren't involved in the actual work. We just, after we heard about it, collected some of the materials that the scientists were kind enough to share with us.
Rob also said that the first hemp weaved fabric in the world was found wrapped around a baby in a 9,000-year-old house in 2014, and in Turkey, of course. So some deep history when you start getting into the many uses of cannabis going back through Eurasia and Europe. Is it safe to say that, I mean, I made a comment before to a reporter. I said that I didn't think that you would have the cultural evolution you did in Europe if you took away cannabis, because if you took away cannabis and you took away, in turn, the inventions that were derived from it, such as paper and fabrics and ropes and harnesses.
Maybe they would have been using stinging nettle. You can make fabric out of stinging nettle.
Right. They would have found other ways for sure.
They would have been bitching about that a lot.
But when what do you call it? When Columbus arrived here, I mean, he found a lot of nomadic people. I mean, they were farming marginally comparatively to Europe. They had not invented paper. They had not invented a lot of the things that were quite common in Europe.
No, that's true. But they had corn. They had beans. They had pumpkins. I mean, the Americans had a lot. Avocados.
What was their predominant fabric prior to the introduction of hemp in the 16th century?
In America? Gee whiz. We need Rob to answer these questions.
Well, I got some good questions for Rob then when he comes on. Then because we don't really talk about this. I mean, he didn't. I know Columbus didn't find nothing, but we use it as a point of reference in the.
What did the American Indians wear? Were they wearing animal skins or?
Yes, mostly leather, living nomadically in many respects because of the winters. Just to keep it real. I would follow the food too. But it's interesting that a lot of people have mixed memories. They think that the Native Americans had cannabis hemp when they did, but they didn't have it until it was introduced to them by the Europeans. Correct?
As far as any evidence has ever shown, that's correct.
Right. Well, history is interesting, and hemp history to me is really interesting just because of the fact that it affects all of us so deeply.
Well, that book you mentioned, Cannabis, the First 12,000 Years by Ernest Abel, is a really interesting place for people to start. And Rob's book is too, but let me tell you, Ernest Abel's book is a short but difficult read. Rob's is a humongous but difficult read.
Why do you
love cannabis?
Is hard, but why do you say it's difficult to read? I find that interesting. I like the prose of the book is why I ask.
Well, it's the average book reader doesn't read a book that large.
It's a little book. Okay. Well, I guess. You know what? I've read it over and over again. I mean, I've not only read it, I like some of the lines in it. Well, like the first opening, he writes this. He writes, "It sprouts from the earth, not meekly, not cautiously, in suspense of where it is and what it may find, but defiant, arrogant, whatever the circumstance,
Will you admit
stamina to survive." And it's just fantastic.
Will you admit the type is small?
Oh, well, sure, but you know what? He writes it in a way that's kind of older and classier, and I really like his style of writing. And he starts off with the invention of paper in China and goes kind of from there, and it's beautiful. And
you don't have to defend my best friend to me.
Is he still alive? Can we get Ernest Abel on?
Ernest Abel, you're talking about?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
He, as far as I know, he went through a period where he renounced cannabis more or less, and now I think he's working at a dispensary or owning or a grow, or I think he's come full circle. But you'd have to Google him to check it out.
I recently picked up some of the dictionaries. He did a cannabis dictionary, if you remember.
Yeah, I've got it.
Yeah,
I've got all of his cannabis books. He was an early researcher that really, really, really searched out all cannabis references in the universe that he could find that were relevant to his books.
He was great. Yeah, that book, that was the first book I found in a public library about cannabis, was his book, Marijuana, the First 12,000 Years. And anyone that's reading can find it online. It's in its entirety on various websites. You can read the text. It's fantastic history.
It's a truly great book.
Yeah, and you can enlarge the text on the screen now. It's gonna, you would love it.
But you could do that with Rob's book too. Unfortunately, it's probably available online. Everything is.
It is. You know, there was this really wonderful guy. His name was, I believe, Cliff, and he used to do computer programming. And in his spare time, he was trying to disseminate information about drugs that was positive. So he was helping populate the Schaefer Library. He called it, because he could sit there and he didn't have to look at the screen. He could just put a book on a prop and type everything, turn the page, type everything, and it was all perfect. And the guy was incredibly talented, and that's how all these books are online at the Schaefer Library, and it's really worth checking out. A lot of classic literature surrounding cannabis and various drugs in the 20th century. He basically tried to digitalize.
Old books, it's no big thing, but new books, I personally think the author deserves to get royalties from somebody buying his book.
Old books is what he basically did, and out of print books is what he did it with.
I understand the difference.
Yeah. And you know, way back then, everybody, you know, it wasn't about trying to plagiarize or anything. He was given, you know, he was giving all the information. He wasn't putting ads up. He wasn't trying to make money. We were, when I first got into this, we didn't have PDFs. The internet wasn't really what it is now. We used to have to go to Kinko's and photocopy things like Jack's book and then go pass it out at colleges and convince people to read this stuff that we were trying to teach them. And when the internet started hitting and we could start buying and creating websites and creating PDFs, Cliff was one of the very first people, because he was a computer programmer, that saw the advantage of this, and he helped create what was called the Drug Reform Coalition, or DRCnet. And DRCnet was really trying to network together all the activist groups in the early 90s. And yeah, I mean, we were excited about PDFs because it meant we wouldn't have to go make photocopies anymore, as silly as that may sound now. But there was that much of a thirst or a bottleneck to getting the information to people, because we couldn't do it any other way. I mean, I met Etienne going college to college in a van with a hemp museum, setting up tables, putting out flyers, trying to talk to whoever would walk up to us and convince them that cannabis was good and it had a long history and that they should consider it a serious topic.
Well, yeah, it was the only way to get information out. And we used to have the actual Kinko's Blue Book, which back then was the master book that told you where the locations of all the Kinkos were in the United States. And so doing events or doing tours, one of the first thing we do is you drive all night to get to wherever we were, and then first thing we did was we hit the Kinkos and hit the Kinkos to make copies. So everywhere we went, and that was the first stop, because usually around the Kinkos there was some place to grab some food or something quick around the area while somebody's in there making tons of copies, because we had different size copies of things to pass out. Because one of the main things with CAN back then, being grassroots, was just to get this information in people's hands and get it in kids' hands so that they fold it up and put it in their pockets. So when they forgot about it, their mom actually pulled it out of their laundry and said, "Hey, what is this?" And it actually sparked that conversation and had these discussions that, you know, over time have broken down, you know, the barriers of conversations.
Jack used to always point out, I loved, which was, you know, when you're out there, don't feel like you're wasting your time, because you're going to get through to the ones that are stoners like you, and they're going to hear you because they're the ones that have woken up. And all they need is that spark, you know, and everything changes. And I think that when we help each other to understand what we know or what we're learning, you know, because I've never felt like I knew everything at all, or I had full assurity of the history of cannabis. But when you help people understand what you're learning and help be the bridge to them, I think it's the best gift you can give a person, because so many people that came, in all honesty, after Jack and Ed Astaire, you know, doing acid and realizing hemp is the, you know, best source of paper, the best source of rope, the best source of fabric. They thought, so I would like to say this to people who don't know this. So Jack had a best friend that owned a head shop. His name was Ed Astaire. And they used to eat a lot of acid, yeah, old Ed. And what happened is they were learning all this stuff. Jack had written a book, a coloring book about grass, and the book was selling really well in the early 70s. And he basically met Ed, and Jack was a bit of a square at the time, and Ed was more of a hippie, and a total hippie. And he turned Jack on to getting high, and they became best friends. And while they were selling the book Grass, and he was running the head shop, and they were working for the California Marijuana Initiative in 1972, which did not pass. It was also a Proposition 19. No, the Third Eye was up in Oregon. This was actually the one down in Van Nuys, and it's in Ed's smoke shop, and I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but it's down in Van Nuys and in Burbank, and that's where the whole kind of hemp movement started. Because as they were passing out this information, the books and stuff, people were coming to them and turning them on to information about paper and ropes, and it always seemed ridiculous. Jack said it first, but then they were doing some acid. And it came to them like, whoa, what if hemp was the best source of fabrics because it was the source of fabrics before cotton? And what if it was the best source of ropes because they didn't use anything else to make ropes? And nylon didn't work in cold environments. When they tried to replace hemp ropes in the Navy with nylon ropes, they found that the Navy had to revert back to hemp ropes because the nylon was failing in really cold climates, extreme climates. And he had this epiphany, like, shit, what if it was the best source of oil before we had whale oil and before we refined it and had polymers and synthetics? You know, why do all the soldiers wear canvas and not cotton? Because canvas is superior to cotton. Why are all our sails on our ships made out of fucking canvas and not cotton? Because cotton wasn't strong enough to handle the winds of the seas. And when he started putting it all this together, that's what created The Emperor Wears No Clothes. And really, that's what spawned it all, was him and Ed tripping on acid and making all these connections. And when they came off the acid, they realized, holy fucking shit, this could be really the truth of the matter. And they started putting it together. And ironically, they were at the time trying to do another California marijuana initiative. So they were signing up voters, and they were camped out at the federal building. And Reagan saw them and basically signed a law saying that you had to be off of federal property after sunset. So the federal guys went in there and arrested everybody that was on the lawn protesting. So Jack didn't want to accept probation because he, as he said, his whole life was a violation of probation, said, fuck you, I'll go to prison. and they sentenced him to 14 days in Terminal Island prison down in San Pedro. Ironically, the same fucking prison they'd send me some years later for 5 years, but whatever. But Jack went down there, and because he was a short stay inmate, he didn't get to go into general population. And because of that, they didn't have TVs and shit like that. All he really got was a paper and a little 3-inch pencil. So he sat there in Terminal Island in what now is known as J Unit, writing everything he knew about hemp and marijuana and cannabis. And it became an 84-page document that literally became a black and white photocopy he brought around and showed people after they typed it out. And that became The Emperor Wears No Clothes.
And those then people taking those and making little graphics, little drawings, or what were the majority of, which also became graphics in the preceding copies of the book, became the majority of what we used to copy out on the road and put out there as information, because it was so well done and so well researched. It also had references, because people were like, yeah, you're full of shit. Well, here's a reference. Go look it up. Back then, it's back in the old way. You had to actually go and use the Dewey Decimal System and things like that at the library, where, you know, Jack actually had to go to research facilities and pull this information. They actually had to find the actual video for the government when it was Hemp for Victory. Exactly.
Well, you know, I'd like to say this because, you know what, Jack did a lot of great things, and a lot of people out there smoking weed with his name on it. The biggest gift he gave back to the stoners, to the cannabis community, was when, and anybody can go look this up now, it's the 14-minute 1941 Hemp for Victory, produced by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and Jack had received a copy of it, and he saw the video, felt like it was authentic, and he actually gave it to a reporter from the Wall Street Journal. And like a good reporter did, he went to the Library of Congress and he looked for a citation because he wanted to make a comment about this and he didn't want it to come back at him. And what happened was he couldn't find a citation in the Library of Congress. All the microfiche and all of the basically information that they were looking in didn't contain any citations to this. So he called Jack up and told him, you're a fraud. You gave me a fake tape. And, you know, who do you think you're fooling? You know, this hemp history is bullshit and you have nothing to back it up. So Jack in California said, fuck you. And he went all the way to DC and went to the Library of Congress and went inside and asked, you know, give me help. I want to find these citations. And they couldn't find anything. So they went back outside to smoke a joint, feeling a little defeated, right? And somebody was standing there with Jack and said, what if we had come here in 1941? They didn't have microfiche back then. They must have had books. So where are they? So Jack was like, yeah, where are they? So they run back inside and they ask basically the librarian helping them. And she says, we do have those books. They were right over by the printers you were using. So she goes back and they find Hemp for Victory in the books, in these old books in the Library of Congress. It's just that somehow, some way, when they were taking this information and copying it into the microfiche, they omitted it. They missed it. And it's just kind of fucked up.
Or they wiped it and removed it. See, that's the other thing.
Absolutely true, because under the Nixon administration, we saw that they were proactively purging cannabis hemp history information. They actually actively requested that college universities take it off of their shelves. This is fucking shit you can look up, people. It is devastating when you think about how it's obstructing your ability to learn your own history, and that obstructs your ability to plan your own future. So Jack found this and then had to photocopy these books at the Library of Congress, and then he had to go and resubmit them to the Library of Congress so they would accept them into the part of the microfiche that was official. And when he did that, the Wall Street Journal guy put Jack Herer on the cover of the Wall Street Journal. And if anyone wants to go back in history, you'll find it. And to me, it's one of the greatest.
With the nice pictograph of him back in the day.
That's right. That's right. And that's why he was on the cover of the Wall Street Journal back in the day, because he proved the journalist wrong. He was a better journalist than the journalist at the Wall Street Journal. And he did what the journalist should have done. It was great.
No, and that video has gone on to just absolutely decimate many a conversation I would have through the mid 90s by having that access to show people that video. You once you saw and how well that actual done, it's on YouTube, you know, your jaw drops and you realize how not only beneficial it was that not only did people do it, they ran a 14-minute video back in the day to show you how and what you need to do and the reasons why this is needed, and you as a farmer need to be producing this for the war effort. Yeehaw, go America.
Yeah, absolutely. The movie was pivotal. You know, when they started off the film showing Grecian temples and the way they wrote the narrative, and this is a strong narrative to write, the way they wrote it was long before these ancient Grecian temples were old, hemp was already were new. Long before these ancient Grecian temples were new, hemp was already old in the service of mankind. That's pretty powerful. I mean, and that's really the history we have to refocus on. I mean, cannabis has to come back globally as an economic crop of opportunity for everybody.
And it is now with hemp being accessible in multiple states. I know people who are producing now American-made decorticators, and there'll soon be seed production. You know, so you know Canada has had its run as the sole producer here in North America, and soon we'll start to see American hemp products, and in time start to see American hemp factories start to, you know, prop up around these acreage, like I saw with sugarcane in the sugarcane factories where I grew up in, you know, Louisiana. The factories come directly to the farmers. You don't go directly to the farms, and that's the reality of large scale agricultural farming, which back then was hundreds of, you know, thousands of hectares of sugarcane growing in rural Louisiana. That was the predominant crop. Right. So I look forward to the day when all around the United States there's actual hemp factories where we can actually have jobs again, because there's an actual real, you know, put to work. You know, we can automate as much as we can the field work, but in the end, it still comes down to humans still have to do it, as well as, you know, the finished product itself will still require, you know, labor and usage. And so it's definitely a way to put Americans back to work, is to invest in American hemp and invest in factories and production, which will put local areas back to causing their offspring to flee to the metropolitan cities and bring them back to, you know, the rural areas of America, so that they're actually producing what we use again.
Hey, I like my Canadian hemp too. I eat it every day.
So hey, I do too. I love my Canadian hemp too. I love my Manitoba hemp. I have it sprinkled on my salad daily, and I have my pills. You know, I keep my endocannabinoid system as saturated as I possibly can. Right. But I also look forward to the competing U.S. hemp market.
Somebody else brought up a fact: can you dab Marinol? And all Marinol is synthetic THC suspended in sesame oil, encapsulated in a gelatin cap. So, and I don't really recommend that you try dabbing sesame oil. There's not very much THC in it. The pills were only 2.5, 5, and 10 milligrams, which is nothing in dab world. Yeah.
Not worth the time or effort.
No, I would say no. So everybody that's ever smoked the strain Jack Herer, please take a minute to look it up. And somebody was in the chat asking also about the drug war I was referencing. And if you start to study the drug war, it was first coined in 1968 by Nixon, of all people. And in 68, he most likely started his plans of what he created, which was the DEA and the classification of cannabis as we know it today, the scheduling. And during that time, there was a lot of very nefarious things that happened, in my opinion, when it came to the dissemination.
What I remember was Operation Intercept.
Operation Intercept. Could you explain that?
Operation Intercept was they basically closed down the Mexican-American border crossing, so that anybody coming from Mexico, it took, instead of like a half an hour or so to cross, it was taking 48 hours.
And when did that take place, and how long?
I think it was, I'm pretty sure it was 1968, and it lasted for, I don't know, 3 months, 6 months, and then they stopped it. They made some agreement.
Yeah, that's going back a little way. When did the paraquat stuff first start, Dave? Oh, Sam.
It was around the same time, maybe a little bit later, like in the late 60s, early 70s. Whereas
Wow.
Operation Intercept, I'm pretty sure it was 68. I remember there was this huge shortage because the classic way to bring it across the border back then, it was a bunch of mom and pops. They were bringing it, in their automobiles or their mobile trailers or their, I knew surfer kids used to go down there with a big van and then just wire it underneath the van. I mean, it was pretty casual.
Back then, right.
And then it really changed after Operation Intercept. They got serious about trying to catch the pot smugglers.
And what Todd
Yeah,
is
they
referring
were-
to as to paraquat is basically the government, or it was the governments were having people spray paraquat on cannabis, knowingly poisoning people, as
Well,
they
what
did
they
back
did
in
was
prohibition with
No, they
alcohol.
That's
what
a
they did was
defoliant.
they sprayed the pot fields, and the farmers washed it down and immediately harvested it before it withered and died. So it was a combination of what the fuck is the government spraying poison on something that will end up in people's hands, and greedy farmers that didn't want to lose the money from their crop.
But can I say this? You know what? A lot of that chemical poisoning, we did it way more than, unfortunately, just in Mexico. It was, in my opinion, there was just a story on, and this ties together, that the Pentagon lost $2 billion worth of military equipment. And I hate to say that in the way that they don't give a shit, because in a way, our congressmen are just a bunch of salesmen who are getting bribed by the military industry complex manufacturers that sell them this equipment with our tax dollars, and they don't give a shit. Once it's bought and paid for, they're just worried about the next budget and the next go round of arms sales, so they can get their kickbacks and whatever they do for it. And the chemical companies are doing the same fucking thing. And these laws that they were doing, which was let's go defoliate the world of cannabis, was chemical companies vying for contracts from the United States government so they could go to places like in Bangladesh and Thailand and other places and fucking poison the land, because the American government determined that they didn't want marijuana growing and they didn't want it coming to America anymore. And we paid with our tax dollars for chemical companies to fucking fly around and poison the fields of our neighbors in order to supposedly save us. But I think it wasn't to save us. It was just to spend that government money. Because they were doing the sales people, or our congressmen, you call them, didn't give a fuck about the people they were hurting in the countries they were poisoning. They just wanted to make sure that the chemical company that came to them and bribed their ass got the contract that they were seeking. So I don't mean to be completely pessimistic, but I think those people were responsible for hurting a lot of people with cannabis prohibition. And, that's one of the reasons why I've always kind of been such an advocate for international legalization, because cannabis prohibition hurts everybody, and we really have to, I feel that that this country is the country that brought cannabis prohibition through Anslinger and Nixon and the drug war all over the world. It peddled prohibition like it was a fucking, really, I think in many ways, to make the world safe for tobacco.
It wasn't just America. It was also England to a degree. It was South Africa to a degree. It was Egypt. And there was another country too. But they were all in favor of suppressing the dangerous cannabis or hashish.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, and you know what? Information is liberating us all. And the reason I do this all the time at Mark, and I think that this is important, is because I think sharing our indignation and trying to, clarify our beliefs with each other and figure out what's right is the best way to do. And I think we should all pursue this in a line of truth and teaching it to other people, because there's no other path to our freedom, I don't believe, than, education, education.
And to be honest, we don't need to reach the converted. We need to reach the unconverted.
Well, it's funny you say that, because when I was sitting in prison, I was honestly thinking about that constantly. Like, when I get out, how do I be effective? And, it's weird. I got a letter from a lady in Boise, Idaho, when I was sitting in prison. She was 71 years old, and she read about me on ifeminist.com, she said. And she was just very supportive of what I, medical cannabis and the point I was trying to make. And I sat back in my prison cell thinking, how did I ever reach that demographic? Like a little old grandma in Boise, Idaho was not who, that wasn't one of the stops on the can tour, we'll just say. But, it made me stop and think, like, wow, like, this is the effect that we can have. And I think it's a beautiful thing when we can touch the lives of others and make them think. So when I got out of prison, when the opportunity came to help Adam and Brett make a documentary of the union, I was all over it, because the goal was not to make a documentary for the movement. It was to make a documentary for the masses. And I think we achieved it really well, for sure. And the culture high was different in that way, because when Adam and Brett approached the union, they were non-smokers, and they were trying to take this approach with journalistic integrity, and they just wanted to tell the truth about what they found out about cannabis. But 5 years later, after the union had become so successful and they had interviewed so many people, they understood the truth, and that's what is reflected in the culture high, because the culture high became really an unapologetic advocacy film for the legalization, the global legalization of cannabis. And, if the truth doesn't work, I don't know what will.
Well, I hate to say it, but I always believed in big business and taxes, meaning the government gets their piece and regulation, and the big business makes a profit. That is the way the real world operates.
Yes. And, though I believe it in a sense that when we teach people on this level, cannabis should be a commodity again, just like cotton is and lumber is and coal. And it should be on the global market for its fiber, for its seed, for its protein, for its cellulose. It should be there with all these other plants. It makes no practical sense why it's not right now. And not only should it be there, when it gets back to the commodities exchange, I think it's going to be one of the biggest players, because it's one of the most environmentally friendly plants that we can cultivate. And on so many levels.
Where do I buy cannabis futures? Wait, and then what I'll do is I'll fly in my jet plane back and forth with botrytis spores. Now, I'm just joking. I would never do that. But there are pretty weird people out there.
I think cannabis futures will be reality. I think cannabis is in all of our future. I mean, there's no way around it. I was having this conversation with Kenny of Trichome Technologies just yesterday, talking about hemp in California. And he was saying, I don't think so. And I was saying, I think so, because I think that people are going to want to grow it for the protein and for the essential fatty acids in the seed at first. And then they're going to start using it to get their CBD from, because I mean, right now we're in America, in the States, we are harvesting CBD, in relatively small batches compared to what's happening in places like Germany, where they're extracting hemp with CO2 in silos, the size of some small houses. And they're doing it, industrial, on an industrial level with food grade materials every day, like it's no big deal. And when we start seeing that happening in California, I think we'll start seeing huge hemp fields growing.
Not only that, but the fields in California will be 20% CBD with less than 1% THC. So, I mean, it's going to, be a lot easier to make a higher quality product, is what I'm saying.
Right. Well, I think, this whole thing is refining. I mean, 20 years ago, I would have never dreamed about BHO, and now it's given cannabinoids to the common people in a way. It made it so that, we could all have something that was pharmaceutical grade and was incredibly healing. I feel that the cannabinoids, when you get them in, dry sift or shatter or wax or butter, and it's just cannabinoids and terpenes, you really benefit from the effectivity and the safety because you can't really overdose on dabs, and you can feel the medical effect of dabs almost instantly. Do you even smoke flowers when you're not with me anymore, Etienne?
From time to time, but for the most part, no. I was always before you were around. Even I was a concentrate, smoker for the most part, because when I was out cycling, it was easier for me to carry just a little bit of hash and and a one hitter than it was for me to carry a flower or a joint or something like that. I've always been. I never had that much pot around. Even when I was growing it, I was usually growing it to sell it. So I really didn't have that much around. So I've always been one to conserve and use one hitters and things like that, small pipes that were small and travelable. When we were all over the United States, it's easy for you to use a cigarette pipe, because as long as you act like you're smoking a cigarette, nobody really has a clue what you're doing. So I've always kind of aired on the air of not only small usage, but look at conserving as best as I could. So over time, when I was able to get access to more hash, and when I was making my own water hash, and when I had access to sieve and dry hash, I was always taking that and then mixing it in a coffee grinder together and then repressing it into a container, because that's where I started discovering for myself. I would try certain hashes and I'd get this effect or this effect, but I wasn't getting the full effect that I was searching for. So by mixing them all together, I was finally getting that full spectrum of cannabinoids. And so I've carried that further once I got into BHO and stuff around 2010, 2011. And then started to take BHOs and then mixing them together in my own little glass thing at 120 degrees, and continuing to do so, and getting the whole cannabinoid spectrum. So for me, as I've had those escalations, whereas in the past I used to always vaporize. I remember you used to visit me. I used to always have the Steinel on, using the old bag setup as opposed to using the Volcano, which I love the Volcano, but it always took too long for me to inflate. So that's why I started using the Steinel, because it had the ceramic core as opposed to the asbestos core for vaporizing herb. And around you were really the first person, Todd, that I had known that was always smoking hog legs all the time, and always had hog legs on you all the time. And then when I lived with you, of course, it was, for the times when we were smoking, it was always large joints. So for a time when we were not hanging out, when you were going through your whole thing, I was smoking larger cones. And that's when I discovered the Vriptech. Originally, the two-piece glass setup with the Steinel gun is when I got really turned on to vaporizing hash or via the flower. And then I started to use less flower by utilizing, that type of vaporization, then switched over to the Volcano. And then when I was out cycling, there was no portable vaporizers back then. There weren't pens or anything like that. So the best thing that I could find was having my blend of my water hash and sieve and a small cigarette and a lighter. And, I could be anywhere.
Yeah, I've always just, it's funny. My mom, when I was a little kid and I couldn't roll joints, this is harsh to say, but my mom would only roll me pinners. And I was like, what the fuck am I going to do with this little thing? So I went to my room with her album covers and I sat there and I taught myself how to roll really good joints that were huge. So that was my little form of rebellion to my stoner hippie mom, was I'll roll fat joints. So that was pretty much it. But then I started growing when I was just 13, and that changed everything, because then, it's like Mother Nature is directly giving you cannabis. So everyone that grows understands what I'm saying. It's just like gifts from heaven, It's
but you've
amazing.
always, I've not known you to not smoke very large joints.
No, I like it. It's my favorite way to, I like dabbing, but sometimes dabbing's too intense. When you and I first started dabbing, and I would try to dab during the day. Shit, I'd be fucking napping by 4:20. I wouldn't be I wouldn't be partaking.
I remember. I remember.
Beyond my face, man. So I think in moderation now, like everything, I do think that being able to dab and flood our body with cannabinoids is fantastic. I was having this conversation with Irvin, who was here and unfortunately couldn't do Hash Church because he came later, but he's been using government grown cannabis now for over 20 years, and he receives cans of 300 joints a month now, and he actually feels that the cannabis, even as shitty as it is, the government gave him, has kept his tumors in check and given him the life that he's living, which is huge. So now all of us, when I'm thinking about the fact of how could we benefit, I think that being able to get cannabinoids into our body it's important. And maybe the fact that it doesn't get us high, once we tune into a point where we've gotten so much of it into our body that it's not getting us high, maybe that's a good thing, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe that's because then you can still function, you can still do all the things you got to do, right, and you're still benefiting from all of the cannabinoids. It's
saturating your endocannabinoid system in ways that we don't necessarily scientifically know. I agree with that, because I can definitely feel a different effect when I smoke a joint with you and then we go to dabbing. There's definitely not only a depth to the high, there's also many layers to it.
I think that's interesting, but let me tell you something. I don't smoke to medicate myself. I smoke to get high. And I want it so that I can get higher and higher and higher until I'm so high I can't. I've never been there.
Do you feel like, Sam, then, that you can plateau? What gets in your way of, like, for instance, if you drink alcohol
every
all day,
variety has a plateau to some degree. Almost all varieties are that way.
Somebody asked about Chinese cannabis, Chenin. I'm going to say it wrong.
Chinesis?
Yeah. What's up with that, Sam?
Well, unless it's from the Western China, in other words, where the Muslim area is, then it's not very psychoactive, because there's cannabis all over China, but it's not psychoactive. But in Western China, they do have psychoactive varieties. So,
can I ask you why the Eastern varieties in China are more hemp-like?
Because they've been grown for hemp for thousands of years.
Because they're closer to the coastal communities, and that's how they handle their sailings and paper and cloth and everything.
That's the tradition, is to grow it for hemp. It's not grown for a psychoactive drug. Whereas in the Muslim Western areas, even maybe before they were Muslims, I don't know that for sure, they do use it as a psychoactive drug.
It's a cool, one of the most impressive projects I saw was the International Hemp Association, because why I say it was most impressive is because you were really trying to not educate the choir, but to educate the educators and the professionals. And, can I ask, in a sense, like how tuned how tuned in do you think the academic world is to the information you were presenting about cannabis and hemp in the 90s? Like, do you feel like that made an impact?
We give it to the internet for free, so it's available for everybody, and we still get offers to try to join, but the organization is retired now. So, but it was an amazing journal. It's scientific based. It's peer reviewed science, and the other thing that's nice about it was printed on 100% hemp paper.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. My copies were confiscated by the DEA when they raided me in '95, and then again in '97 because I got more copies and then it took those. But information is dangerous, so I can see why they had to take it away from me. But they were beautiful. But your path of trying to get this information to the scholars in the university, I think, was really noble on all levels, and a lot of people don't really
remember what our motto was: dedicated to the advancement of cannabis through the dissemination of information.
I loved that motto. I feel like that's been my life mission in a weird way, so I totally feel it, where you're coming from. And I learned so much through it. I mean, because a lot of what was in Jack's book was, I'm not saying exaggerated, but it was enthusiastic. And, when it was overgeneralizing in some refrains, the history was correct, but his assumptions of what it could do, I think, was pretty huge. That said, when I was reading the journals were real. The journals were like, I don't know how to put it. It was real science. Yeah, it was real science telling me what real crops were really
reviewed.
Yeah. It's just huge. It's just huge. What year did the hemp pest book come out that you did?
I don't remember.
That's incredible.
Man,
for the amount of
information.
I love it. One of the main things I respect the most about everything that you and your crew, you guys have done, is how much of the information that you've just 100% turned over and given away to people. And I think it's fucking awesome. And I've been a direct result of, learning from this for a long time. And I thank you so much, man. I wish more people that were getting involved in this industry would, actually put their ego aside and make it about the plant and make it about the discoveries and make it about the contributions that they can make to the community as you did. And I really do. I applaud you so much. You have no idea. And thank you for all the great bud that I've smoked over the years, because I know where it came from.
I guarantee you that there were many others like me, and there will be many like me. Cannabis has a bright future. It's very obvious now. It's going to go mainstream. And it might attract a few nuts and flakes and profiteers, but I think it's a great future.
I do too. I believe that, when people start having the experiences with cannabis, that everybody that I've had, that you've had, that all of our friends have had, this is where compassion and empathy, and this is where it's all going to blossom and bloom, because cannabis really connects people to the reality of healing and love and patience and caring and kindness and all things that are, in my opinion, good. I mean, I can't wait to see the polar shift that happens away from alcohol and pharmaceutical use, because that to me is very inspiring. So many people are dropping away from habitual pharmaceutical use and habitual alcohol use, because now they can get cannabis. And I think that the more cannabis that gets out at a cheaper rate, the more of an impact that that's going to have on society for the better.
Well, I want to see it below $100 a kilo. Then anybody can make dry sift hash at home.
Yeah, it would be awesome. I think we're going to get there, in time. To be really honest with you, I think, truth be told, that, the cannabis has a history that touches all of our lives. And when we start realizing that, I think that it's easy for us to tune into our connection to the plant. The one thing that Jack Here's book did for me that I didn't expect to have happen is it put cannabis as a hub in humanity. Because when I was in school, sure, they taught you we got a cotton gin instead of the 1790s, but they didn't really teach you what the hell they were wearing before the cotton gin. And they sure the hell didn't teach you that they were using cannabis hemp fabrics for their sails and cannabis hemp fabrics for their ropes and cannabis hemp fabrics for their clothes when they were doing all this exploring before there was a cotton gin. And it started to put things into perspective for me, because suddenly I understood that cannabis played such an important role in history. When you think about how important is paper, how important is clothing, how important is our fucking oils and our inks, and they're huge. And you think about it from that perspective, and suddenly cannabis starts playing this really pivotal role, and it kind of felt like it connected me more to history. And I hope people
if I remember correctly, more slaves were imported to America for hemp fields than cotton fields.
Well, unfortunately, the first laws on slavery, Jack always pointed out, started in 1619 in Jamestown, Virginia. And he used to say that there were sister laws that were enacted at the same time, which were you had to grow hemp on 10% of your farm land because, excuse me, what was happening is tobacco was growing indigenously all over the Americas. And the people that were settling in the colonies wanted to grow what was easy and fast, but it did not provide them with blankets and ropes and sails and the linens and the things that they needed. So they had to sell the tobacco to the people that were showing up to buy it, but they were trading it and bartering it for the fundamental elements that they needed there in the colonies. So the government involved themselves and said, look, you have to grow hemp on 10% of your land because we need it for all of our own home production. And Jack also pointed out that you could pay your American taxes, your federal American taxes with hemp by weight per ton, or up until the 19th century, into the 19th century. This is all true because when back in the times we were an agricultural society that was trying to build itself up, and we were all trying to pitch in to make the place better. I mean, all those people that lived hard, they realized that community was important. So they did everything they could to try to build a community together that would work, or we wouldn't have what we have today and the societies we have today. But a lot of people don't realize, we want to romanticize about the covered wagons going west. Well, guess what? Every covered wagon was covered with canvas. Every single one of those things were getting pulled with hemp ropes on the horses. So where would all of that westward exploration have been without cannabis hemp? Nowhere. And this is also why we have feral hemp going all the way across North America. It's because as we went west, we were dropping the seeds that we used to grow the covers for our wagons and the ropes for our horses. The clothes on our back was all made from cannabis, and there's no two ways around it. I mean, American soldiers were wearing canvas exclusively up into the Second World War. Hey, Mark, good to see you. Can you hear us?
I can. How's it going, guys? Sorry about taking so long. I spoke for almost an hour, and then I couldn't get a hold of Colin.
Sorry, guys.
He had the key to the room, and I was stuck at the booth, so I was talking to lots of different people, and it's a nice event. It's going pretty good. How's the conversation? How's it going, D?
Real good, brother. How are you? You in Toronto?
Yeah, I'm in Toronto.
Okay. Fucking cool, man. I see you're calling there. We had dinner at the Needle last year and got a picture together, all of us up there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, how you doing,
What's up,
buddy?
brother?
Good to see you, man. Good to see
Yeah,
you.
man.
Should we do a bong rip? Are you plugged in and ready to go, Mark?
Oh, we're ready to go.
Oh, we are ready, buddy.
I figured so. Bong rip, we go.
We're ready.
Coast to coast.
We're ready. Get this party started, eh?
Coast to coast.
All right. How's the church going, everybody?
A religious,
Chilling out?
a religious experience as usual of knowledge.
Ah, yes, a religious experience. Look at him hitting on the 35 millimeter banger. Boom, boom, shaboom. Got a little carby on there for you. We're going for that low. I like that. Hold that. Go for the low over here.
Like that taste. Then I can heat it up real quick.
How long have you guys been rocking for? Has it been 3 hours?
3+.
Yeah, it's been okay.
Wow.
I like it better when you do it,
Sam
though.
still in the room?
No, I'm not. I'm gone, man. Gone.
Oh, shitty. I wanted to talk to him. That sucks.
No problem, dude.
We were talking about haze.
Did you just hit your second rep? Are you giving it a little tutu?
I did.
Nice. Okay.
I'm gonna have to
Okay.
clean this.
Here, check this out. Bring it over here.
Bubble Man, your Lolo. What do you think is the temperature of your Lolo around
Oh,
approximately?
dude, it was really low.
I'd say that was a 400.
It was delicious, though. It was just unbelievably delicious. Whole profile.
I would say it was a 400-degree hit. Like probably not much more.
The second one, right?
The second one, yes. Yeah. First one looked maybe like more in the 500s or something.
Yeah.
It still was total puddle, no Chaz. I got a new trick that I think I might have even mentioned today already, but
we're gonna need some water.
I'm gonna mention it again for those that didn't hear. That bong cleaner, that DC, well, the quartz cleaner really, because it's not bong cleaner. It's good for the quartz. Maybe it's good for quartz. I poured a little bit into the Chazzed out bowl today, and I was blown away at how effective it just peeled all of the blackness off the bottom, lifted it up to the top. I wrapped it with a Q-tip, and it was like as clean as a whistle. How clean is a whistle? And do they make quartz whistles? I don't know. I'm going to have a dab.
I think you
Dab me up.
Now
Dab me up.
now everyone's searching for quartz whistles.
Bong rip. Bong rip. How clean is a whistle, you ask? I don't know. How clean is a whistle?
I guess it depends on whose whistle it is.
Yeah,
Right.
because when you think of a whistle, you think of after you've been whistling a while, and you turn it upside down, it spit drips out.
So it depends on who blows it. Oh well.
Who are you borrowing your whistle to? Daffy Duck?
No, I'm saying no matter who does it, because you have a lot of humidity in your lungs when you breathe out.
Hey, listen, don't you talk for my whistle.
What the fuck are we talking about? You guys, come on.
With that whole, we're
It's
exploring
just-
the whole clean whistle thing.
do you want the Holy Grail?
I do. I think I want the Holy Grail dipped in the Congolese.
Jesus, if it's called
Please.
Holy Grail, why would you not want it? If it's called, no, just give me average Grail. You got some low grade Grail? No, I'll take that Holy Grail. Hey, yeah.
Right? We're actually hitting the mediocre Grail. It's the MG.
My
Serious.
favorite is
New product.
moldy Grail.
Oh, the moldy Grail. Yeah, that's.
Can I get some
always
extra?
one up.
Can I get a little extra botrytis on that?
I'm gonna do
Oh my goodness. Well,
dip.
Got some botrytis terps.
here we go. Here we go. My turn.
Whoa, whoa.
That'll do. That'll do.
So does it taste
Yeah,
holy?
that was a great.
Does it taste holy or graily?
I'd say it's Congolese more than holy, but maybe it's a little holy Congolese.
Holy Congolese?
Have you guys heard of the Lemonese?
Oh, do
You
tell.
guys got to check out the Lemonese. Lebanese crossed with lemon cake. I can't say anything else about it, but it is called the Lemonese, and it's
Ooh.
something.
I like just the sound of those genetics combined.
Is it a hybrid?
It's actually two landrace. Actually, it is a hybrid. It's originally lemon cake was a landrace that was introduced to some hybrids that were from the late 90s. That was inbred with itself over time, and there's a cutting of just that lemon cake, and the offspring of that lemon cake was brought up here, and there's Lebanese that's going to be hit with.
And where is that Lebanese? Like, what do we know about that? I wish Mitch was
Lebanese,
here.
I think Mitch has a better backstory, but someone went down and picked up those seeds in a small village and brought them back. I think that's the story.
Yeah, he gave me some of them. I've got a friend in Jamaica growing them, and he's really stoked on them.
And it's in the bioscience.
Right, he gave some to Mowgli.
Yeah, so Mowgli has some in that field, and you can kind of get a better understanding of it in there because it's actually in a class of its own, which is really interesting.
So is it just called
Lebanese? That's it.
Oh, he put in the Lemonese into
Lebanese.
Lebanese. Okay, that's what I thought.
Lebanese is it, and then we're gonna hit the LC with the Lebanese and make Lemonese.
Right. Yeah, so it's in the Phylos.
Yeah.
No problemo.
What a cool thing to have, to be able to say, it's in the philo, Sam. Check it out. I like it.
Yeah.
All right, so what do we got happening in the chat right now? Welcome back, Marcus. Yes, welcome back indeed. Hey, they're getting bong rip ready, going great. John Maddox, Peter S., Tim Roy, chilling like a villain's in the house. Chilling like a villain started my giveaways on my Wake and Bake channel. I started giving away just little things that people send me. Not really trying to get anything for it. Just thought it was a cool idea. And he literally saw walking on my fab egg while I was doing my Wake and Bake video, and he sees this ant. He's like, "Hey, there's an ant on your fab egg," and it just tripped me out that he could spot that. And I was like, "Man, I gotta send you something. I'm gonna send you a dab mat for spotting the ant on my fab egg," and basically sent it away. So what's up, chilling like a villain? Good to have you in the chat. Bong Rip says Funky J. Bingo Lombardi says cheers. Oh yeah.
I'm gonna follow suit with a little red Congolese in there.
Are you?
Yeah.
I think you should do a little red Congo dip. You after creating a new star with that genetics by sounds. How's your new dab mat chillin'? Oh yeah, and then the funniest thing was, when you're like, you want to give something away and be generous and be like, oh, I'll just, have a giveaway or whatever. Chillin' like a mad villain lives in Europe. It's like, thought the guy might be in Edmonton or something, $2 postage. Just joking. It was totally not expensive at all. And I couldn't believe how fast it got there. So mad respect to you, chilling like a villain. Stoked that you're enjoying that. He thought it was a fly, though. Yep, he did. But it wasn't. It was an ant. And he started the giveaway. So everyone should always give mad respect to chilling like a villain. That's what I'm saying.
I'm going to give
Can you tell him hot?
the ant.
You should give thanks to the ant. There's always another perspective, and trust me, Skunkman Sam is going to be the motherfucker to find it. If there's another perspective, you always have the most unique perspective. Not going to lie. So Johnny B's here at the event. Tony spoke today with Dr. Brent Reynolds from United Cannabis. They did a cancer panel that was quite spectacular. And I spoke briefly on macro photography and glandular trichome medicine. It's pretty fun. I have to say that I think that we get more people watching live in here than maybe are at that event right now. Like, it's hard to say. They might get thousands over the course of the day, but there's probably about like 700-800 people in there, don't you think?
Yeah, maybe more.
Maybe more, like 1,000?
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
You yesterday, your talk was out of control. By the end of that thing,
I know. I hope they recorded that.
I think they did. All right, so here's what I did. I went around and got all the app cards from the guys to get the footage.
Excellent. Smart guy right there. He's going to get the footage. I didn't feel I needed one more responsibility of having a camera that in front of, so I just sort of
and I felt like they already had the camera under control.
Right?
Like last year, there was none of that.
Todd's been holding it down. Yes, huge shout out to Todd and the rest of the panelists for holding Hash Church down. It isn't as easy as it looks. There are difficulties, and it's a weird feeling that Todd, I'm sure, understands because I know it. It's just this anxious feeling of like, not pulling it off, not getting it working, having to nobody wants to see us do troubleshooting because it's not working. You guys just want to tune in and start getting knowledge right away. So I feel where you're at. I did not take a lot of pics, Thomas Neese. I'm sorry to say. I've been too busy to do that.
I did get a bunch, though.
Oh, good.
Yeah, Todd was asking lots of questions and stuff like that for sure. He was getting lots of questions onto me and stuff, and it was enjoyable. It was fun. Good time. Good job.
I learn a lot from it, to be really honest with you. So this is the reason I always enjoyed doing it. I mean, Mark and I have always talked on video anyway. It's not like I can drive up the street and go hang out in his living room or vice versa. So this has been our only medium to communicate. So it's kind of natural to have the conversation and to share it with other people. And I think the point is when we're sharing it with other people, we can actually talk about some pretty cool topics because, there's a lot to learn and there's a lot to share. So it's really cool. I feel honored. I like the interaction.
It's what keeps me coming back week after week. I'm learning. I'm not used to being around people where I learn from. I'm always teaching. And to actually sit back and learn and listen as well as contribute to the conversation, it's an absolutely wonderful organic thing that, yeah. Thank you, Bubble Man.
Yeah, thanks, Mark, for sure. I would like to do a show where we actually set it up so everybody that's typing can ask questions, because, you know, if we could direct questions to people that, you know, it's a lot of good stuff. I realize that when I'm talking to Sam all the time, it's like, you know, the conversation only ends where my imagination ends, and that's really fantastic. I mean, you know, you've had opportunity to forget more than I've had the opportunity to learn about cannabis in some regards, Sam, just because you've been focused on it and experiencing it for my entire life. Been going to India and getting high, and it's a whole other level of been there, done that. And I appreciate you sharing it with us a lot. It's really a pleasure to sit here and ask questions, because I learn a lot. I love haze, for instance. I've been such a haze head ever since. So to be able to ask you about its origin is really fantastic.
Yeah, we weren't even a glimmer in our pappy's eye, and Sam was doing it.
Way doing it.
Well, I grew my first plant in 1965, and but it only got about 6 inches tall, and somebody stole it, or the gardener found it, or something. It was in a flower box. But what's even funnier is that there was a Russian conspiracy to get me high for the first time. This is a proven fact. I bought 3 joints for 25 cents each from a girl at Hollywood High School, and her parents were Russian, and she had a heavy Russian accent too. And I think she stole it from her parents and rolled some skinny joints and sold them to me. So that's how I got high the very first time.
You got to say how you smoked all 3 of the joints back to back until they were gone.
Well, that's also true. I didn't know quite how to smoke pot. So I lit the first one, inhaled a puff, blew it out, inhaled another puff, and smoked the whole joint like that without taking any fresh air in between. Then I lit the second one, then I lit the third one. And by the time I was, you know, already getting through the end of the second one or the beginning of the third one, I started feeling the difference. And by the time I was done, man, I was floating. It was, yeah. I realized.
You set the tone.
What's that?
You set the tone for who you were to become based on how you started puffing.
I had tried beer once or twice, but I didn't like it. And yeah, I did like this.
Well, thank you
Very
again,
cool.
Sam, for everything you've done.
I was going to mention when Todd was talking about how we can't, sorry, I don't have headphones, guys. I'll try to turn this down a little bit. You might want to mute your mic if it's not muted, Sam. Just how we can't just visit each other easy. One more way prohibition has robbed us of a great, great wealth, you know, the greatest wealth, time with your friends. You know, like a thing that we sure appreciate when we can do it by meeting up in other countries. But when you're kept from your friends, and even in Colton Turner's situation, kept from your family, that's just kind of sadistic. You know, that's a type of jail in a sense, where it's like, sure, you still have your lots of friends, you're still surrounded, you still have love, so it's not quite like jail in that sense. But there are certain people that you know you're supposed to gravitate to, that you're supposed to spend time to, that, you know, so much so that you end up going to like cannabis cups in Amsterdam for 20 years in a row or whatever, just because you're like, whatever, this is all right. If this is the place, this is the place, this is what we're going to have to do. Let's make it happen. Because when you live in all different countries and you all have like indictable offenses, as we like to call them in Canada, it makes it a little bit hard to just go and visit each other. And it's kind of a bummer. I'm looking forward to some amnesty for cannabis crimes in the future. What about you guys? You want to get into the amnesty for cannabis crimes conversation?
They're starting to do it. You know, we talked about in California, there was an article that went around about cannabis convictions going up in smoke, because in California, everybody now, part of 64 was that you can go back and ask for your previous convictions to be expunged. So it's the beginning. It's the start of what will happen. We're not criminals anymore, and we shouldn't have been treated like them in the first place. and the courts.
I'm not even looking for repatriation type stuff. I'm just looking for get rid of my record. Okay, sure, you put me in through courts and you did all this stuff, but it's just like, how about, I'm not like in the situation that you're in and that some of my other friends are in that literally had their freedoms taken for this plant. I was messed with and I got a record and I had my time, the little bits of freedom being taken from being in a cage, but not like some of my friends that have done 5 and 10 and more years. It's just, you know, for a plant, maybe that's a great crime, but think of how many great crimes that have been that are even more serious, genocides and such throughout history that also just seem to get swept under the rug, and everyone's like, you know, just pretend that didn't happen. I suspect they'll do it with prohibition the same way they do it with everything else, just sort of sweeping under the proverbial rug.
Yeah. I think that reality's catching up to prohibition, and prohibition's getting its ass kicked, and I'm really glad to see it losing for a change.
I'm really glad to see Colin taking a dab for a change.
I hate lover. Let's do this. I better do one too then.
Coast to coast, man. Go.
Yeah, man.
Coast to coast. Look, he's already got a ship in his hand.
Can't let you do that by yourself.
I appreciate it, man.
He's good like that. He'll have your back in all sorts of situations, particularly the don't dab by yourself situation. Sometimes at 3 in the morning, I'll just hit him up on Skype and be like, D, I need to take a rip and I can't do it alone. And he'll be like all waking up like, no problem, bro. I got you. I'll take a rip with you at 3 in the morning.
You betcha.
Hell yeah, you do. Well, we've seen Johnny B and his girlfriend partying it up throughout the hotel and the event, and we've seen Dana Larson, and we've seen who else have we seen? It's been a good group. There's been quite a few people that we bumped into.
Miss Envy's here.
Miss Envy's here. That's right. Mike and is it Taryn?
Taryn.
Say hi to me there.
Yeah.
And on camera. Yeah. She's an awesome girl, man.
Yep.
Yeah, she's
both her and Mike are awesome.
Yeah.
Both her and I like hanging out with both her and Mike. I've done a couple events where I've shared booths with them, and it's always been more than dab it up strong. They actually got in a little bit of trouble for
the terpene.
I think they were selling terpenes or something, and the lift. Not the lift, but there's been a few funny things. I don't know if you watched the Wake and Bake the other day, but they came up to me at my booth and told me I couldn't blaze. For the first day and a half at this event, I blazed hard, and I mean really hard. Today I blazed a little bit, only because my friend's got a super fucked up back and neck, and he was in super pain. I gave him one dab of the sweet skunk rosin, and he was like, I could go dance right now. It was quite an amazing thing to see, actually. So yeah, then we got sent to the lounge, and the lounge looked like an Apple store with all these phones, but the phones were vaporizers, and I guess that's what they wanted you to use. But we went in there with dab rigs and motherships and torches, and once like 5 or 6 of us erupted out into that, it was pretty quick security guards coming in and being like, first they said, you can't dab in the middle. Remember those tables in the middle? You can't dab in the middle. You got to go over to the side. So I literally take like 3 steps, and now I'm over on the side table, and I just finished my dab and got out of there. As you can see, I haven't cleaned my rig in about 2 days here, so it's looking a little bit rough, but we'll get it happening. Oh, thank you. I got to shout these guys out. I meant to shout them out earlier.
So that's delicious. Yeah.
This is the Skywalker rosin. Mm-hmm. Right. Whole plant, fresh frozen, solventless extract. Glacier melts. If you're in Canada, particularly if you're in Ontario, and for sure if you're in Toronto, remember this. Glacier melts. They make some great hash. I've got a couple of vials of
this is GHG. That's really delicious.
The other two.
It's just It's,
oh yeah. And here's another one. So this one is it doesn't have the name on it, but it was delicious, super cushy, and definitely 5+ star. So if you want to try some juicy resin in Canada, Glacier Melts has you. JTK on this one. It looks real nice through the jar. It's been sealed, but yeah, They always sort me out. If you remember on Bubble Man's World, when we first met the Glacier Melt guys, it was here in Ontario. It was during not the Lift conference, but I believe maybe Champs or the Treating Yourself, whatever it was before that. It's had a few different incarnations. And we met them. We went and visited their grow. We did a little video and hooked them up with a good friend of mine, True Genetics 604 from Whistler. Another dude that's been on the channel a bunch, and now he works. And so they're making really nice solventless extracts. So I had to shout out Glacier Melts.
Apparently genetics too, but I haven't seen them. So look out, look out for that.
I guess I better take a Glacier Melt dab.
Yeah,
huh?
right.
I mean, this shit is nice.
You might want to heat that up, friend.
Yeah, you might want to heat that up. It's so stuck to this jar. Try to get some out and show you guys, but it's definitely like superb quality. There we go. Kind of pulling it out a little bit. It's really like, let's see if we can't get that in a better light. Nice. Very good quality. 5-star plus. I'll put it on the nail and we'll see if it disappears. Maybe it'll be 6-star. I haven't hit this bubble yet. Okay. It's got that. Oh, you know what it's got? That's barb. That's barb. That's 100% barb.
He told me that he had barb in there.
It's barb.
Yeah.
Wow, I just figured that out. Very cool. All right, well, I'm going to take a dab. Hopefully you guys will join me.
It's real hot though. Careful.
Real hot.
You might chaz up that thing.
I'll chaz it up.
Do a last dab. I kind of have to run too.
You doing a bong rip?
And I don't know if I hang up, what'll happen if I hang up.
No, let's do it, Todd. One last dab and we'll call it a day. And thank everyone for watching.
One last dab.
I don't know. There's got to be. Let's do it.
Bong rip, mother lovers.
I gotta wait for my rig to warm up.
I don't. I'm starting this dab.
No, Mark. I did.
And happy Memorial Day in the United States to those who gave all to be there. Thank you.
Cheers for the freedom. We don't have to grow hemp in our front yard. I'm joking about that. I'm joking. We're free. Keep telling everybody they're free. I'm just kidding.
Wow.
Everybody's choking before me. That's not fair.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. That was so low temp and amazing, though. Oh my God.
I guess, yeah.
Oh.
That was a nice, like, yeah.
It was quite lovely. A little bit of I wouldn't call it char, but just whatever, like a little bit of residuals there on the bottom. I can clean it up. I think a lot of it's there too because I didn't hit it as hot as I could have. I'm happy. I like a nice easy clean on the quartz, let me tell you. Puts a smile on my face. It's not very difficult these days. Life is good. Well, I'll be back tomorrow morning with the Wake and Bake show. Giving away something. I don't know. I think I'm going to give away one of Joseph Kitchen's books, actually, tomorrow. He was kind enough to donate 2 of his coffee table cannabis photography books. And it's quite a nice book. I think it looks lovely on the coffee table. So I'm going to give one of those away tomorrow on the Wake and Bake show. So please tune in. It'll probably be around 9 a.m. Vancouver time, 12 p.m. East Coast. And yeah, come check it out. Maybe you'll win a book. Come in the next day. Maybe you'll win something else. I'm going to give a whole bunch of shit away this week. Should be fun. And in the meantime, thank you for holding it down, Todd and D420K and Etienne and Skunkman Sam. As always, much appreciated. Try and put a show together next week together with maybe some special guests. And I'm going to be back home. It'll be a little easier to run the show. And thanks, everyone, for watching. Thanks for puffing, and thanks for coming in. I'll see you all.
Bye-bye.
Peace.